Naruto of the Six Eyes. Yo, this is my first story, so no clue if this will continue or die along with my drive within a day, ahahaha. Anyway, this basically just came about when I thought about the binding vow that Sukuna brought up with Yuji, and I thought, wow, imagine implementing something like that with Naruto and Kurama. But then quickly realized that it was a bit boring, so thought, fuck it, let's do the Six Eyes instead. There won't be any character crossovers or that. It's basically implementing some abilities and properties of cursed energy onto chakra. Let's get it. Konoha Academy. Today the academy would finally end. It was the last day before graduation. Well, assuming that you passed, that is, but the young blonde boy definitely wasn't going to fail. He's the strongest after all. Uzumaki Naruto was that boy in question. The 12-year-old had yellowish blonde hair that fell freely down with an undercut style, allowing the fringe to just reach to his eyes. He wore a standard set of clothes with seemingly black cargo pants that had a blue tint to them, tied at his shins with tape, and standard shinobi sandals. His shirt was also a standard blue long sleeve, pulled up and tied at his mid-wrist, with a red spiral on each shoulder and the middle of his upper back, as well as a few pouches tied to his waist. He stood at an impressive height of 5 feet 1 inch and with a good athletic build. Okay, boys, show the unison sign. A chunin with a spiky ponytail and scar across his nose spoke to Naruto and his opponent-to-be. Uchiha Sasuke had it tough. Naruto thought he was a talented child, there's no doubt about that. But he had been both outmatched and spat on during his life. He had lost his family when his elder brother supposedly went mad and slaughtered them all to test his capabilities, leaving only Sasuke alive. He claimed that Sasuke was nothing, unlike Itachi, who had been born to be great with almost unrivaled talent. He was barely better than average and was so entirely unfulfilling that he wasn't even worth killing. The village claimed to have been unable to catch Itachi, and he escaped after the massacre, leaving Sasuke to swear vengeance, vowing to end his brother's life with his own hands to avenge his family. Naruto doubted some of that, though in fairness he also thought that the top people in the village, being the elders, clan heads, and even the Hokage, were cowards, so maybe he was a little biased. Naruto's distaste for such people aside, Sasuke's survival felt weird. In any case, Naruto thought highly of Sasuke. His potential was great. He could literally see it after all, but his will and spirit, clouded with rage and hate they may be, were still unmatched. So of course, when set to fight him, "Oh, we get to fight Sasuke. How excited are you to face yours truly?" Naruto said with his voice high and playful at first, then swapping to self-reverent and cocky for the last part, while leaning his face forward and giving a grin. Yep, Naruto definitely liked Sasuke. HN was the ever-so-eloquent reply to his joyful boasting. Ah, if only you had activated those pretty red eyes of yours, then I would have claimed it to be fate, Naruto continued, ignoring the twitch in Sasuke's eye. Well, sadly mine don't turn off or on actually, so I'm afraid I'll have an unfair advantage. Wait, I know, I'll just close my eyes. It's not like I need to see to beat you anyway. This time Naruto's tone held a playful mocking in it, hoping to annoy Sasuke with his comments, which they did, but did not distract him from his observation. Sasuke stared at Naruto, more specifically his eyes. They were a light blue color and seemed to almost look as if they were reflecting the sky. They had a slight glow to them that just screamed power. They were beautiful and horribly uncomfortable to look at. It felt like they were peering past and into you, breaking you apart and seeing everything about you. They stared into your soul and invaded your deepest, most sacred place within your mind, all without even trying. They were the Six Eyes, a dojutsu totally unique to Naruto, with no past holders ever being spoken of. Even the Hokage had never seen them before. They were a mystery. And with their mysterious origins came unknown powers. Only Naruto knew what they did, and even that was being generous. He didn't know as much as just understood. That was the only thing he had revealed about them. Their natural ability to see and understand chakra beyond any other sensory ability or dojutsu in the world. To see it at a deeper level than even believed possible, and to then naturally know and understand its place and interaction with the world. Naruto's eyes were, despite their beauty, a divisive thing within the village. Some believed they were nothing special, a parlor trick used by an orphan boy with a god complex hoping to have others believe in and revere his holy existence as much as he seemed to. Others were put off by them, likely having made the mistake of looking into them for too long and disliked and avoided Naruto because of them. But in Sasuke's opinion, the craziest ones were those who believed they were bestowed onto him by a demon in return for a contract or deal. They claimed he was the reason for the Nine Tails attack that was coincidentally on his birthday, that he was cursed and that his eyes were proof of such. Sasuke never understood how people could claim Naruto made a binding vow with a demon for his eyes and had been born the same day, let alone be the curse that caused the Nine Tails attack. Surely, they recognized the idiocy in claiming a newborn not only had the intelligence to converse with a demon and enter into a two-way deal in exchange for fancy eyes while giving something away, but also that while doing so inadvertently caused the king of the Biju to attack, leaving him with his cursed eyes as proof of his treachery to his people. In his opinion, they just didn't like Naruto. Sasuke? You there? Hello? Sensei, I think I've dazzled him with my beauty, and he's unable to fight. Sasuke snapped back to reality from his wanderings at the sound of the voice. He noticed the girls of his class cheer his name. Even the boys looked to be supporting him for once. Naruto's reputation certainly extended far. Iruka sighed at Naruto's antics and thanked the sage he'd be free after today. He loved Naruto, even tried to fill an empty role in the boy's life as an older brother to help guide and mature him. But gods, he was annoying. Thankfully, with Sasuke's return to the living, he could get this beatdown, a spar over with, and finish up the last portion of the graduation exam. The written and ninjutsu tests had gone well. Most of his pupils seemed to have done well enough when he took a quick glance at their answers, and of course he had judged them on their ninjutsu proficiency personally, so he knew how they performed in that section. Now the last of the taijutsu exams was to take place between his two top students. Not that it truly mattered, seeing as both boys had already made it mathematically impossible to fail when considering the scores they achieved overall. Are both of you ready? After receiving a nod from Sasuke and a lazy hand wave from Naruto, who seems to have gone from excited and bubbly to bored and lethargic enough to pass for another of his students, Iruka began the spar. Then begin. Naruto stood with his eyes closed, hands in his pockets, and awaited the attack he knew would come after all his boasting. As he suspected, Sasuke rushed towards him, hoping to take the advantage through gathering momentum. Ducking under the sweeping right hook that came, Naruto spun around, now having swapped places with his adversary. Sasuke, having expected Naruto's dodge, was not caught off balance and used his momentum to lift his back left leg and go for a high kick whilst allowing it to turn him toward his opponent. Naruto dodged easily after quickly leaning his head back and allowing the leg to swoop past him. Naruto, not wanting to drag it out, decided to forego his usual approach to battle and get into it straight away. He engaged Sasuke after parrying a blow meant for his throat with the back of his hand. He threw his left hand to Sasuke's stomach, which stole the air from his opponent and allowed him to push harder at his defenses. He allowed Sasuke to show off his own skills at the same time, though, not completely overwhelming him, and instead using the spar to try and help where he could in terms of gaining experience and showing any openings or faults within Sasuke's form. The boy, although talented, trained by himself, and so these were always helpful, and each time Sasuke came back having fixed what had been pointed out to him. Naruto loved teaching. Getting tired of the back and forth, which he was on the losing end of, Sasuke made distance and regained his breath. Naruto usually fought quite reservedly, using your own power against you until he got into it and began to show his overwhelming power. Considering his opponent seemed to want to jump right into it, Sasuke thought he better up the ante. He rejoined the fight, moving faster and with more fluidity than before. He brought his leg down in an axe kick, which was blocked with Naruto's forearms. He had his leg pulled trying to escape and had to eat the clothesline to the chest that put him on his back, but he quickly rolled away from the stomp that would have ended the fight. Naruto smiled and beckoned Sasuke closer after he rose from the ground. He caught a left that was aimed for his nose and held the arm, not allowing Sasuke to escape. He used his free hand to pepper his opponent with blows and eventually wound up a kick that landed under the chin, lifting him off the ground. Before Sasuke could recover, his leg was grabbed again and Naruto threw him out of bounds, ending their spar. Though relatively short-lasting, the skill, speed and power on display was leagues ahead of anyone else. Naruto assumed that they had done enough and decided to just end it, despite both boys still being well able to continue. He recognized that this spar shouldn't be one fought to the bitter end. It was purely a demonstration of skill and the teachings you learned, not a genuine spar between shinobi hoping to train and better themselves for true mission combat. With the last spar complete, Naruto and his classmates were allowed to leave after being given instructions to return at the usual time tomorrow for their results and team placement. Making his way off the academy grounds, Naruto ignored his classmates grumbling about his win over Sasuke and made his way home. He actually quite liked some of them, but also recognized that many were simply limiting themselves by solely learning from their clans, but he supposed heirs learning material from outside the clan would cause tension within the hierarchy of cowards who ran this place. They were people who started out normal but became corrupted by power and prestige. They were backstabbers who used the downfall and hardships of their friends to further their own position. Well, that was irrelevant to Naruto. He had known of such things since the discovery of his eyes. He had watched and listened as they debated and discussed what to do with him as if he was their property. Some voting for his death while others wished to take control of him and use him for their gain. But in the end, despite political positions, power dictates everything, and the Hokage had ruled he would be left alone. Truly, power was everything. If you were strong, the village would have need of you. And well, the name he would eventually create for himself was proof enough of this boy's strength. Naruto of the Six Eyes, the strongest. But for now, he was a boy awaiting his team and Jonin-sensei to be revealed so he could continue his path. Naruto's apartment. Naruto sat alone in his apartment. The room was nice, not overly lavish or extravagant, but still better than what an average orphan would be accustomed to. The apartment consisted of a living space with a couch, coffee table, and TV, along with some space for bookshelves and storage. Next to it was a kitchen separated only by a worktop that jutted out from the wall, with the side on the living room prepped with mats for eating and the kitchen side housing the oven and fridge. Lastly, his bedroom was nice, large enough to hold a double bed with a wardrobe for clothes and even a place for study. Naruto disliked it though. All this apartment did was prove to him that strength was all these villages cared for. He was strong, and so he was treated well. Those other orphans who were weak, well, they certainly weren't enjoying such luxuries. Those in power are always afraid to lose it, to become normal again. They paved the way for those who were strong to trust, respect, and love them by ensuring they were treated to the best the village had to offer, all to allow them to remain in the positions they held, to desperately hold on to their power, but they were always afraid. Have too much power and they would inevitably fear it. But there was nothing he could do. He was supremely talented, likely the most so ever, but he was young. People like the Hokage could best him easily as of now simply by way of pure, overwhelming force. That would change in time. He would likely become the strongest, but there was still much to learn about his power, but more importantly about chakra. Naruto knew that understanding chakra, both his own and the world's at a deeper level, would allow him to use and manipulate his abilities to a degree he couldn't even fathom. And he would learn that from his Jonin-sensei. The Jonin force are the elite of the village, the poster children of Konoha. Very few make it to the Jonin rank when you consider the vast amount of people who become shinobi. To be a Jonin means to have had absolute faith placed in your abilities, the belief that if you are there, whatever task is at hand will be completed with utmost efficiency. Naruto knew that his sensei would likely be of an even higher caliber. He and Sasuke were likely to be considered VIPs within the village, and so would receive a higher tier of instructor to both teach them properly but also ensure their safety. Naruto opened his eyes for the first time since closing them against Sasuke. He almost wanted to flinch as all the excess information he had been blocking was allowed to enter his brain. But he ignored the temptation and focused on the visible chakra flowing around him. He watched as his own flowed like a raging river within his tenketsu, unbelievably powerful and yet flowing along the path he dictated. He looked more intently, almost as if his eyes were zooming in. He peered deeper into his inner power and allowed his eyes to analyze and break it down for him. Yes, he could tell this was the way to better himself and his natural abilities. Understanding of his own chakra, experiencing the core of all his strength firsthand. Konoha Academy. Naruto returned to the academy the next day as had been instructed and sat down. He was just on time and so ignored Irika-sensei's glare and reprimand. Okay, maybe he was a little late, but it's not that bad. Naruto, you're 15 minutes late. Any longer and I'd have released the results and teams before you even arrived. Okay, maybe it was a little bad. Sensei, I promise it's not my fault. The girls just wouldn't leave me alone on my way here. They kept shouting, "Come back, you're so pretty." and have my babies, so I had to warp here. Naruto spoke with a completely straight face. Irika just looked at him with a dumb expression, really showing how he felt about that obvious lie. Gods, he hoped Naruto was lying. Wait, warp? Anyway, Irika continued, ignoring Naruto's grin and sly wink at Ino, who he had sat next to. First, I want to congratulate all of you on your performances. A majority of you here have achieved a passing grade. Those who have not, don't worry, there are many more opportunities to advance. Whether you continue to study an extra year here or even try your hand at an apprenticeship under a chunin to earn a field promotion doing tasks here within the village. I'll begin handing out your results and allow you a 15-minute break outside while we prepare in here. If you passed, I'd like you to return to the room after that time. If not, you're free to head home and we'll discuss how to move forwards tomorrow. As Naruto was handed his form showing a clear and easy pass, he allowed himself a little fun in celebration. Looking up from his sheet to a corner of the room, he could easily see the chakra that was hovering around. He assumed it to be some kind of spy jutsu based on the chakra, and so gave a cheeky smile and waved to it before discreetly hitting it with an unseen repulsive force. Hokage's office. The Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was sitting behind his desk, which was littered with pictures of students. He was decorated in his full attire befitting the leader of the village, with a white and red hat displaying his position as the fire shadow to all. In front of him stood his Jonin senseis to be. These would be the people that would fan the flames of the will of fire and support the young leaves who would eventually take his and their place in protecting the great tree. They were currently watching as the Chunin sensei Irika began handing out the results to his students. So, any questions or complaints? The elder Kage rasped out. Hokage-sama, if I may? A young brunette with dazzling red eyes made herself known. After receiving his blessing, she spoke. Why focus so much on the Uzumaki? I understand his talent certainly, but he is of no clan or noteworthy background. His early talent will surely be overshadowed when the clan heirs mature and grow. She held nothing against him personally. She was sure it's tough to grow in such an environment and remain okay. It's totally understandable he would delude even himself in his attempt to feel important in such a wide village. But she couldn't see why he would be placed in such a way as to ensure his safety and progression to the same extent as the Uchiha heir. Many seemed to agree with the points raised, some likely for even less altruistic reasons than the first, but it still ached Hiruzen's old heart to hear people speak of Naruto in such a way. He was not as close to the boy as he would have wished. Naruto's seeming resentment of him started after the council meeting when his eyes had first been discovered to be abnormal. Naruto was smart even then. He had watched the child listen in and discover how the rulers and nobles of this village discussed ways to kill or manipulate him, in fear of the power or curse he may carry. He watched as Naruto formed a steadfast belief that they were cowards who shouted to kill a child but would not dare do it themselves. Then when his presence was known, laced their voices with honey, attempting to sway him. Naruto is placed where he is because I believe Kakashi is the best suited to teach him. There are many among you who believe Naruto's eyes to be some kind of ruse, but I assure you, as far as we can tell, they do have some chakra properties and abilities to them. Many around still appeared skeptical but would never openly defy their Kage. The room all looked into the orb on the Hokage's desk, allowing a view of the classroom, and focused on one boy in particular. But Hokage-sama, surely. The words died in her throat as they watched Naruto look at them before giving a smile and wave, clearly showing he was aware of their presence watching him, and the feed went dark. Ha 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 ha. Asterisk cough cough asterisk. Well, hopefully that display allows us to move on from this topic, yes? Hiruzen gave a chuckle at the display. That boy and his ego would surely bring him much pain and amusement in the times to come. The room seemed to grumble in agreement to the Hokage's words, but Kakashi remained focused on his new charge. He had been given a team that broke the usual pattern of placements outside of direct requests. Instead of his team being made up of the best male and female student along with the lowest scorer, he had been allotted a team with the top 3 in the class. He wasn't surprised to have been given care of Sasuke. He was the only one left who wielded the boy's bloodline to teach him. His female student looked impressive on paper, but Kakashi knew to look underneath the underneath here. He saw the girls as she truly was, and despite her promise in a few of the more delicate fields, he wasn't impressed. No, he assumed he was given charge of Haruno Sakura in an attempt to steer her in the right direction mentally. His last student, though, was his current focus, Uzumaki Naruto. His sensei would surely be proud of his boy, though maybe he'd be forgiven if he beat some humility into the child, he thought with a gentle smile hidden beneath his mask. Academy. Having returned from their break, the students who had passed were once more sat within the classroom. They had walked in to find Irika standing ready to tell them the news that would determine their lives for years to come. Once more, I want to say how proud I am of this class. I know you will become fantastic shinobi. Who knows, we may have a future Hokage graduating with us today. Irika spoke with a genuine voice, truly showing how much he cared for these kids he taught. Okay, moving on to our team selections. He began to announce each team of 3 and the sensei they had been allocated. Okay, and Team 7 is Uchiha Sasuke. Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto. Your Jonin sensei is Hatake Kakashi. The newly announced team looked among each other and had varied reactions between them. Yees! No! Were the simultaneous shouts from Sakura and Ino, each girl having wanted to be placed with the object of their shared affection, Sasuke. True love prevails, piggy, ahahaha. Sakura was beyond happy to be with Sasuke. Naruto's place in the team was entirely irrelevant to her. Ino grumbled even further when she heard her placement with Choji and Shikamaru. She was even a little disappointed not to be placed with her fellow blonde. Naruto was at least fun and entertaining, unlike fatty and lazy, as she had so nicely named her 2 childhood friends. Sasuke bore a small grin for a second at being placed with his rival and friend. Not that he'd admit such a thing to anyone. He was happy to be placed with someone he could continue to push himself against, someone he learned from, and even someone whom he thought understood him a little. Sakura being on the team was a non-factor. He would ignore her as he always had, well, try to anyway. In smaller numbers, he'd likely have to interact with her sometimes. I hope this Kakashi is powerful. I need to know more. I need to be better. Naruto was slightly more animated than his broody teammate, but less so than his other seriously loud one. Well, I'll just have to make friends with our sensei. Wouldn't want to disturb the lovebirds and be stuck third-wheeling, Naruto said to himself aloud and gave a sigh as he rested his head on his palm. He stuck his tongue out at Ino, who had peeked over at him when she heard lovebirds. She quickly spun around after giving him the finger, which he laughed at. 3 hours later, and the once bustling classroom was empty, everyone having left with their new sensei to begin their new lives as shinobi of Konoha. Well, almost everyone. Team 7 remained sat in their seats awaiting the arrival of this Kakashi guy who would be their sensei. Argek, what is taking him so long? This is ridiculous. Sakura was not happy. She had begun the wait, overjoyed at being placed with her beloved. She had fallen into fantasy after fantasy, revolving around her dark prince. Yet when she had mustered up the courage to ask him out after waiting an hour, she was met with a reply from an extremely annoyed Sasuke. She had been shot down. All because this Kakashi was late and it was annoying Sasuke. She would never forgive him. Sorry about the wait, guys. A black cat crossed my path and I had to take the long way round before I accidentally ran into an old lady crossing the road. So I helped her to her home. A new figure spoke, standing in the doorway. He was tall with gray hair spiked up to one side and most of his face covered by both a mask and headband slanted down to cover his left eye. But Sakura was so put off by the ridiculous excuse, she didn't even realize who this man was until he introduced himself. I'm Kakashi. Meet me upstairs on the roof so we can catch up. And with that, he disappeared. Sakura watched Sasuke stand and ready himself to leave before both looked over at their remaining teammate. Sprawled out over the desk, Naruto was sound asleep. Having got bored of being the most annoying person in the world after a few minutes of waiting for Kakashi, their teammate had decided to just sleep. Deciding to abandon him to whatever fate awaited, the dumbass Sakura and Sasuke made their way to the roof, with Sakura attempting to make conversation the whole way. When they arrived, Sakura was surprised to see Naruto sitting on a step in front of the gray-haired guy, once again resting his eyes if his posture was anything to go by. Wah! How did he get here? Sakura asked, looking from Naruto to Sasuke, then their new sensei, attempting to piece together how the boy she had just seen asleep downstairs was apparently already here. Well, he appeared just after I did. If I didn't know any better, I'd assume he was pretending to sleep and teleported up here or something. Sakura thought that was ridiculous. Naruto may be talented, even she could admit that, but he was still an idiot and defiantly wasn't capable of that. She and Sasuke approached the step their fellow student had taken purchase on and sat with him, awaiting their sensei's instruction. Kakashi had a long look at the children before him. They each would have their difficulties in teaching them. Sasuke was a complex boy who needed both a firm hand to keep his ego and desire in line, but also a comforting one who could bring down the walls he'd constructed after the massacre and help bring him back into truly living again, rather than single-mind idly pursuing power to kill his only remaining family. Sakura was, for lack of a better term, a fangirl. She had talent, she was smart, not fight smart but book smart, that would lend itself well to areas of study like medicine or even seals to an extent. Her small reserves of chakra also meant that she naturally had great control over it. He could build up her reserves to a respectable level while never forcing her to lose control. But the issue was she would never survive nor choose to partake in such tiresome and unflattering training. She was solely interested in Sasuke and would be happy to remain as she was and watch him grow and protect her. Naruto was likely the hardest, though. He was the most talented person Kakashi had ever seen, and the only reason he hadn't bested his Minato or Itachi's record for early graduation was that it had been prohibited, for fear of both losing the power he offered the village and losing their control of his power as he grew beyond them. If the way Naruto arrived in front of him was any indication, then the boy had more to show than he had been letting on in the academy, which made sense. He was powerful enough to dominate all his year just by throwing around punches. There was no need to seriously go at it and risk injuring someone. But teaching someone like Naruto posed its own issues. What do you try show him? It's likely that he would want to focus on whatever benefit his eyes give him in combat, and any abilities or techniques they bestow onto him, but with Naruto being so secretive of them and withholding information, beyond what he assumed was a passive ability to see chakra, Kakashi could hardly help in that field. Anyway, the kids were looking at him like some kind of crazy person now after he just stared at them without speaking. So it's time to get this new chapter in their lives started. Yo, I'm Hatake Kakashi. I'll be your Jonin sensei. Well, assuming you pass, that is. Kakashi spoke with an eye smile that didn't comfort his students at all. Pass? All three thought while looking at the man who claimed to be their teacher. Oh yeah, Kakashi would enjoy this. Academy roof. Well, we can leave that for a little bit later. How about we talk a little first? Give some introductions? I know you all know each other, at least partially, but sharing some more details would help make us a more well-refined team. Kakashi spoke up, diverting the conversation the way he wanted it to go before he dropped the bomb. He looked over his three new students, well, possible students at least. He didn't have much hope for them, not due to their skills or prowess in the shinobi arts, but from their personalities. He watched how they moved around one another, how they looked at the others and decidedly did not like it. There was nothing too major, no active disdain that could have been present considering children and their tendencies to be jealous and cruel. Sasuke appeared annoyed with Sakura's presence. No, that's not quite right. He was annoyed by her closeness to him and constantly open-mouthed, it seemed. From the eye rolls and general closed-off posture, he wasn't interested in conversing with his chattier teammate. Though from the few looks he cast over at Naruto, Kakashi was a little surprised but happy to see some admiration but rivalry burning in them. A good rival always pushed you to be better, but it should never develop as much as to sour your actual relationship with them. He concluded Sasuke was not as lost a cause as he had presumed he might be when it came to possible teamwork and fluidity in this group. Sakura was, as he had previously observed, talking Sasuke's ear off. She was scooted up right next to him and looked to have hearts in her eyes. She either didn't notice or didn't care that Sasuke was annoyed at her, which wasn't good. If she didn't care about his thoughts but continued to bother him, it didn't bode well for their future teamwork. The same being applied if she was too wound up in her talking to notice the person she was talking to was visibly frustrated by it. She had not once looked over to Naruto since sitting down and was a fair distance from him as well. She couldn't continue to ignore the presence of one of her teammates if this team were to pass his test. Though she didn't seem to hold any ill will to Naruto, perhaps other than his continual victories over Sasuke, but that was just petty and something she could easily get over. Kakashi hoped she could turn on her teamwork when in the field, She had some potential for a medic, and he would love to have a skilled one alongside him and his team. Lastly, he peeked over at Naruto. He wanted to sweat drop at the boy before him. He was lounged back leaning on his elbows with his legs extended in front of him. He had his eyes closed again. Perhaps they are sensitive, Kakashi mused. Sakura seemed to believe he was asleep, but he defiantly was not. He didn't even seem to be trying to act asleep as he kept sighing and looking over at his teammates as if to suggest he was annoyed at something. Perhaps at Kakashi for stalling to build up tension and analyze them. Kakashi couldn't gauge much of value from his posture other than he was totally relaxed and confident. He appeared to dislike wasting time and waiting for others, which wasn't necessarily a terrible trait, as long as it didn't translate to his patience in dealing with shinobi activities like watching a target or dealing with clients, but it certainly wouldn't bode well for the boy if he passes with Kakashi as his sensei. He figured he'd need to observe Naruto in a different setting to get a better idea of him. So, we'll just start with basic introductions, your name, a bit about you, a dream or goal, anything like that. He first pointed at Sasuke to get them started. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I train to ensure I'm strong enough, stronger than anyone else, so that I can achieve my dream. No, it's not a dream but a promise I made. I will kill someone and avenge my clan. I will ensure my clan rises to prosperity again after I've reclaimed its honor. Sasuke spoke darkly, his hands clasped, and face partially hidden behind them. He appeared to have gotten himself worked up during his speech, with his previous irritated expression having gave way to his focused but burning rage that came through in a glare. That left a bit of an impression on the team, having dimmed the mood a little. Sakura looked shocked at him before calming herself, but still decided to give him some space to avoid being on the receiving end of his anger. Or perhaps it was out of a bit of respect she had for the pain Sasuke must have gone through. Kakashi wasn't surprised at the goal, or rather promise Sasuke had made to himself. It would make him a little bit hard to steer. Anyone who could direct Sasuke's hate or manipulate it could cause some damage, so he'd need to help the kid out a little. Naruto hadn't changed at all, likely having already known or suspected like Kakashi. Well, that's certainly a lofty goal, Kakashi spoke to ease the tension Sasuke had built a little bit before moving on. Right, what about you then? Pink one. Pink one. Cha. Anyway, my name is Haruno Sakura. I like. She peeked over to Sasuke and blushed at him before continuing. I enjoy looking after my hair and reading. My dream is to. She once again trailed off, this time not even finishing the thought or attempting to hide her squeal as she seen Sasuke. Kakashi had already understood Sakura, so nothing was really gained from her introduction. He only reconfirmed he would need to work hard with her. Aha, how interesting. Anyway, now you blondie. Kakashi sounded so utterly unenthusiastic at Sakura's introduction, she actually felt a little embarrassed. This is seriously boring. I already knew Sasuke had anger issues and Sakura was a creepy stalker. And they already know that I'm incredible. Naruto spoke still, without even looking up from his relaxed position. He earned a shout, an annoyed grunt in response of his characterizations of his teammates and himself. So what's the actual point of this eye patch? My, quite the detective. Kakashi decided to get to it. Well, I'm Hatake Kakashi. I don't do much, at least not something I'd be allowed to talk to you about, and I suppose I have some goals. But Naruto's right, the point of this was to warm you up for the shock to come. You aren't technically shinobi yet. Kakashi revealed after a little wait to build suspense. He enjoyed the shock and surprise from his charges. Even Naruto peeked one of his eyes open to pay closer attention at the announcement. What do you mean? We passed the tests, right? Sakura was clearly feeling the pressure mounting up again. The possibility she would need more than just her knowledge she could rely on for the academy tests surely worried her. Yes, you did pass the academy tests, but they are not the only ones needed to truly become genin. Your chosen jonin instructor also gives his potential students a test to ensure they are people they want to train or that the kids are truly ready. You can either be failed outright and all return to the academy if the jonin deems it necessary, or maybe only one does. Kakashi looked over his genin, for once appearing to them as a serious figure. He was slowly mounting pressure. Kakashi's test would revolve around teamwork. He would never train people who would abandon a comrade. If his teachings lead to such, he would have disgraced himself and everyone he had cared for and lost. So, he was trying to create tension within the group, while also dropping a few hints at his criteria, namely the introductions Naruto had so brazenly disregarded, instead looking for something deeper with Kakashi. They were designed to breed a feeling of camaraderie and set them up to ignore his orders to abandon someone when the test would begin. But without that feeling amongst them, the pressure would build, and they would lose their ability to analyze the scenario effectively. Even the most obvious lie or bluff could fool someone who's panicked and stressed. So, with all that said, join me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 9 a.m. And a word of advice: don't eat breakfast tomorrow, you'll only throw it up after what I put you through. With his last piece of misdirection laid out, Kakashi vanished in a poof of smoke. Silence reigned over the rooftop as the three remaining mulled over their potential sensei's words. This might actually be quite interesting. I wonder what he'll have us do to prove ourselves worthy of his time. Ahahaha, how frustrating. I was hoping we could jump right into the exciting things. Naruto spoke up, breaking the silence. He's quite the manipulator, but to what end? What does he want us to do? He muttered so only he could hear his words, truly questioning what his sensei hoped for him to achieve with the maze of suggestions and traps he had laid out. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I want to take a nap. Today's been boring. With that, Uzumaki Naruto also made his exit, leaving only a sharp gust of wind behind as if he was pulled away by some invisible force. Training Ground 7/12 p.m. the next day. Naruto watched as his potential sensei showed up 3 hours late and only offered an even worse excuse than last time to justify himself. The man was surely lazy and unpunctual, but Naruto didn't think that was all there was to it. More of these mind games. It's clear now he's trying to throw us off our game, to make sure we can't operate at full capacity both physically and mentally. So, what test have you conjured up for us, Mr. Eyepatch? Well, you're all here bright and early just as I instructed, but enough with that, let us move on to your test, Kakashi spoke to the team. Naruto watched closely, observing both his teammates and the man who would be testing them. He noticed they appeared ragged and sluggish already, but they had done nothing but sit and complain while waiting around. I see, so they followed his instructions not to eat as well. Naruto had ignored that particular instruction, believing it irrelevant but also assuming it was a trap laid out, even if at the time he didn't know for what purpose. Now it seemed clear Kakashi was trying to wear them down. Kakashi made a show of pulling out 2 golden bells held by red string and dangling them in front of himself. Your goal is to steal these bells from me. You can achieve that in any way you see fit, but remember, come at me with intent to kill, or you'll never even see them. You'll have until 2 p.m. so in 2 hours if you don't have a bell, you fail and you will be tied to a post while I eat in front of you. Naruto watched Sasuke and Sakura cringe at that, but he was more interested in the past criteria. Steal a bell from the hip of a jonin. That's rough. I'm sure this man is someone quite special. His eye doesn't match the rest of his chakra and feels extremely powerful and potent. Well, it's likely a Sharingan if his alias as the copy ninja is anything to go by. Plus it looks red. Naruto had briefly researched his sensei, nothing major, just a little background knowledge you can get from public sources, but this man truly was well known. Sensei? You only have 2 bells. Shouldn't there be 3? Sakura seemed to have gotten over herself and noticed Kakashi's ace in the hole. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, it's entirely up to the sensei's discretion who is passed and how many out of a possible graduate team. Personally, I only want 2 genin, so my test reflects that only 2 people can pass this test. One off you is guaranteed to fail. Sasuke and Sakura looked wholly taken aback before proclaiming the unfairness of this. Just because they had been given Kakashi one would fail. But Kakashi only said that the world was unfair. Genins died on missions, and he didn't want to take on 3 so he could ensure better training and protection. At his logical reasoning, Naruto watched his teammates eye the bells and subtly move away from each other. Each wanted their own formation. Sakura would want Naruto to fail so she could be with Sasuke, while Sasuke likely wouldn't care who he was with as long as he got a bell. He'd maybe even steal one if he didn't get it off Kakashi. Naruto had just decided he liked his new sensei. What a test to put newly graduated students through after mounting heaps of pressure. This would surely crack everyone's composure and test if they were worthy or not. Had he not been focused on his sensei, his words and actions as well as watching his teammates at the same time, which he could only do so effectively thanks to his enhanced processing speed granted by the Six Eyes, he would be as lost and conflicted as his fellow teammates. Okay guys, come at me with intent to kill. As I said, whether that be in direct combat or traps, do what you need to pass. You may begin. Naruto watched his teammates jump off into the forest to conceal themselves, but doing so in different directions. He looked at Kakashi, who looked slightly amused at his presence. But he was hiding it well, having taken out a book to read. He's seriously good at mind games. He could have people wrapped around his finger in a fight just by feigning boredom. Oh, you're still here? Shouldn't you be off hiding yourself? Well, I don't think so. You have what I want. How does hiding help me take a bell? It just lets you stall and make this boring. Naruto replied. That's an interesting way of looking at it. But I suppose you're not wrong, though I would have come looking for you. Kakashi seemed amused at the response. I think I'll indulge you with our first contact in this scenario, he continued. Lowering his book to his pouch, once more jingling the bells on their way, he stood loose waiting for an attack. Well, he's taking me perhaps a little more seriously than Sasuke or Sakura. Naruto looked around and spotted his teammates hiding places. At least they're watching. I'll fight for a bit before retreating to them, and then we'll build from there to achieve the main objective of Kakashi's test. That way they'll have seen the level of this fight and come to realize on their own the true purpose, or at least will be more receptive to the idea of working together when I bring it up. Well, no time to waste. I think I'll show off a little, yeah? My future team's watching after all. And with that, Naruto began his attack. Usually, Naruto was reactive in a fight, especially at the start, but that wouldn't work here with the difference in experience and level. Plus, Kakashi seemed to have no desire to start it himself. Perhaps he knows my preferred style and is forcing me out my comfort zone, though that's maybe just overthinking his laziness. Naruto clasped his hands together and vanished from his spot. Reappearing behind his target, he let loose a powerful kick aimed to Kakashi's right temple. But before it could connect, the elder ninja lowered his head to avoid the kick and spun around, aiming a punch to Naruto's midsection with no hesitation. Launching off his standing foot, Naruto avoided any contact easily and made a little distance again. Kakashi seemed a little put off by the speed he had shown off there. It was faster than usual thanks to the hand sign, but still it seemed the Jonin had followed him and reacted quickly enough. That was a little dangerous. If I had my book out, that might have actually caught me off guard. Kakashi seemed to stand taller, his easygoing persona shattering as he allowed himself to truly show of his physical stature. You're a dangerous kid, Uzumaki Naruto. Well, I do try my best. Shall we continue? Training Ground 7. Well, I do try my best. Shall we continue? Naruto noticed the change in Kakashi's posture. This fight was about to change gear. These people are going to be my team, and Kakashi will be my sensei. It's important he has an understanding of some of my abilities. I suppose I'll show some moves off here then. Even if he can't help directly, surely his knowledge will help me apply and utilize them better. Having made up his mind to show his hand to this team, Naruto this time adopted his usual battle strategy. He waited for Kakashi to engage him. Having gained the attention of the Jonin, Naruto assumed the man would indulge him a little more than he would have at the beginning of their fight and would attack to see what Naruto was trying to show him. As he hoped, Kakashi did indeed instigate the next attack. Jumping in towards him, Kakashi appeared behind him and attempted to trip him with a quick leg sweep. Once again, Naruto clasped his hands and vanished. Appearing behind Kakashi himself, he raised his right leg for a kick at his opponent's face as he turned to face him. Kakashi leaned his head to the side and allowed the kick to sail past him, then attempted to take advantage of the missed attack and went to grab the leg, only for it along with Naruto to vanish again. This time, however, Naruto didn't appear behind Kakashi but directly in front of him, ducking under the arm Kakashi raised to catch the kick. Naruto took a swipe for the unprotected bells at his waist. Kakashi only had just enough time to jump back and make distance, though not before Naruto managed a touch at one of the bells. Naruto stood back up from his crouched position and looked to his potential future sensei. The man was looking at him weirdly, as if he couldn't figure something out. Well, if it was how he was moving around as he was, Naruto would explain it to him, but not just yet. If Kakashi wanted any chance to figure it out, he would need to bring out that eye, and that would surely be embarrassing for such a renowned man. But it would also tire him out, so a win-win scenario for Naruto. Trying to take advantage of his opponent's distraction, Naruto vanished without the hand sign. He once again went for a kick, this time forcing Kakashi to block by crossing his arms over himself. The blow knocked Kakashi's hands up and forced him to slide back in the mud. Naruto moved forwards again and held his index finger on his right hand up while moving his left hand in front to cover whatever was happening from the gray-haired man's sight. Chakra technique reversal. Red Naruto seen a red ball appear hovering above the tip of his finger and allowed it to go off. The result was an abrupt repellent force smashing into Kakashi and throwing him back into the air. The man easily corrected his flight path with a flip and landed on the ground. Looking around immediately, he seen no one in front of him. Then by pure instinct he spun around at full speed to his left and landed a back fist to the figure who had appeared and made an attempt at the bells. Kakashi felt the contact and immediately worried. Damn, he actually got me. He teleported behind me while I was flying and didn't allow me to see when he moved or where. I acted on instinct there and slammed my fist into him because he got past my guard. That was my full power. That could kill him. Kakashi fully turned around hoping his student was okay, but it was likely he would be out cold or worse. Only to see him completely fine. The boy had moved away, clearly surprised at the amount of force he had encountered on that attempt, but he was completely unharmed. Naruto, how are you unharmed? I hit you there at my full power. I know I felt the contact. Kakashi questioned. Well, that was scary. Seriously, that force could have knocked my head off. You're certainly a powerful shinobi. Likely one of the top few in the village. Naruto answered back, ignoring the request to explain his survival. Seriously though, that was scary. I acted purely on instinct to activate it on time there. Even with my advanced perception time, I barely seen that coming. Well, that's always what I assumed its current weakness was anyway. Realizing Naruto wasn't going to explain himself, Kakashi decided he would force him to. Naruto seen Kakashi appear before him again and only just leaned to the side on time to avoid the jab at his nose. Kakashi continued to throw punches and kicks, and the blonde was struggling to keep up now as Kakashi upped his pace and power with each time Naruto dodged or blocked a shot. Kakashi pulled out a kunai and began to swipe across his body, and Naruto had to push himself to his best to keep up. Seeing the kunai headed towards his left shoulder, he pivoted to his side and allowed it to pass by harmlessly, while also moving into Kakashi's guard. He threw a quick hook to the body, and it struck cleanly and powerfully. He was using it not to defend himself this time but to increase the power of his blows. When he seen the knee Kakashi raised to hit him on the nose, he attempted to back away only to realize the kunai he had dodged earlier was again on its way to be stabbed into his back if he moved. Seeing no other way out, he again warped and appeared behind Kakashi, who spun and threw the kunai behind him at Naruto while he was reaching for Kakashi's vest. Naruto was forced to abandon his attempt to land a clean hit and dodge, which allowed the Jonin to attack. Now well over Jonin speeds in his offense, Kakashi forced Naruto solely on the back foot. He felt like he was beginning to make glancing blows now, but Naruto still appeared like they were not even bothering him. Kakashi faked a heavy kick to Naruto's face, and when the blonde held his hands across to block, he changed trajectory and kicked the inside of the boy's left knee. Realizing his mistake faster than would be possible without his eyes, Naruto raised his leg just in time to lift it over the kick, and then using Kakashi's precarious position to his advantage, he spun keeping his foot raised and only extended it out, landing a heavy blow backed up by an accompanying unseen force to the Jonin's side. Skidding back a few feet, Kakashi had enough and began to fight totally earnestly, only without any intent to seriously harm or kill his student, leaving Naruto up against all Kakashi could offer, without of course any jutsu or unveiling his eye. He began dominating the fight and landed many blows to Naruto's side and arms, and although he felt the contact, Naruto showed no ill effects or any sight of slowing down. If anything, he was beginning to keep up better the more he was pushed, like he was adapting instantly mid-fight to this level of combat. Naruto went to make distance and secure his position, but he was afforded no space or time. He leaned back almost horizontal to avoid a spin kick that would have knocked him clean out and had to retreat backward via a backward handstand when Kakashi planted his foot from the kick and moved forwards to grab him by the shirt. Naruto, not wanting to be overrun, began to fight back. He grabbed the hand that tried to catch him and held his opponent in place. Then he drove an open palm into Kakashi's stomach, landing 3 blows to the man before he let go and spun around to his left, raising his leg and aiming his left heel to kick the man away. But Kakashi was far from incapacitated. Though the blows hurt and appeared to be laced with some unseen force to apply extra impact, this man was not one of the best in reputation alone. He easily avoided the heel flying for his chest by landing on the ground and simply focusing on moving at his full speed. He appeared right in front of Naruto, his fist already in motion, and aimed the hit to the boy's stomach. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched the man all but teleport in front of him. He couldn't warp. The technique wouldn't take effect fast enough due to his oversight in thinking he had actually hurt this man. He'd have to show it again, but this time there would be no hiding it. Last time Kakashi hadn't been looking at him. He had yet to turn to him, and he had been unable to see the impact clearly thanks to the flow of combat the few times he had landed in this last exchange. But now he was watching. As had happened last time Kakashi felt his fist impact with Naruto, he watched the boy with his uncovered eye at full attention. He had briefly considered revealing the other one, but for one thing that would be embarrassing, he didn't even unveil that for some weaker jonin. To do it against a genin, or rather potential genin, would be ridiculous. But it would also force him to explain himself to another person here, and he had no desire for that if he might not even pass this team. The boy in front of him stood still, even after the punch connected. He looked up into Kakashi's eye, then simply took a step backwards. He was fine, he showed no pain, no injury, absolutely nothing. What the hell are you made of? I hit you really hard there, and you didn't even wince, you just took that on your stomach with no repercussions? No, that's impossible. Kakashi seriously needed to figure this out. This boy's potential was ridiculous. He was actually keeping up with him at what easily amounted to Jonin-level speeds. Naruto himself was beginning to move at speeds a boy his age would usually need a Sharingan to perceive. An evident ability granted by his eyes was either future sight or seriously advanced perception. Naruto was beginning to move and dodge at the same time Kakashi began to move to attack. He reacted instantly, acting almost as though he had minutes to choose the best course of action within a split second. He was able to keep up at that level and then return fire onto him. If Kakashi wasn't as durable as he is, those hits he took to allow him a surefire attack would have actually ended this fight. Naruto sighed. He was going to explain it anyway, but he hadn't wanted Kakashi to think he had to force him to. This just made the man's suspicions of what he was hiding and why he was hiding it. Well, no, not quite. You didn't actually hit me, Naruto replied. Don't be ridiculous. I felt that, I know I landed that blow. Whatever. Here, come on over. Naruto stuck his hand out and waved Kakashi over to him. Come on, I'll show you. He continued waving his hand at the man. Deciding to humor the kid, Kakashi moved over to him and stuck his hand out. Attempting to place his hand on Naruto's, he was bewildered when his hand stopped a good inch before the kid's. Trying to push it further, he couldn't seem to move it any closer at all. Wah! I can't touch him, not even a little. Kakashi looked up from their hands at the boy. See, I told you, Naruto said, proving his earlier statement true. I have more than one hereditary ability. Well, I assume it's hereditary at least. This is Mukujin Limitless. It's the basis for all the more physical abilities you've seen from me. The 6 eyes, as far as I can tell, are what's needed to truly utilize it, though. None of what I've done could be used without them, at least not how I do. The concentration and ability needed to use these is so great that without the eyes to match, it's likely none could be realistically used in combat. The enemy won't just stop and let you focus for a few seconds, will they? Okay, but how were you doing that? You said the ability was called Mukujin, and that it encompasses all your attacks, so how did you stop me? Or teleport? Was that how you pushed me away when you covered your hand from me? Kakashi seriously needed to hear this. He was so caught up he forgot he gave Naruto his hand, or rather wasn't expecting it to be used against him. I will tell you, but not just now, yeah. After all, you might not even be my sensei if we can't pass here. With that, he locked his hand with Kakashi's and made a move for the bells. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get more than a touch at them once again. Kakashi threw him away with enough force to tear apart the hold Naruto had. But before the fight could continue, Naruto warped away from the field and into the trees, hoping that the fight was enough to have achieved his goal, to force his team together, having realized the impossibility of victory alone. Kakashi stood now alone in the field, contemplating the newly discovered factors surrounding Uzumaki Naruto. Seems like the kid may have already sussed me out. I did lay it a little heavy on them with pushing them together. But I assumed the tension would have still been effective at disrupting logical thinking and evaluation, enough to make it difficult at least. Kakashi wasn't so surprised actually. He already knew Naruto hadn't ever really shown off. Everyone who could think logically and disregard any bias they held against him could. But the extent of the abilities shown, and Naruto even claiming that they were the result of an inherent ability completely separate from the Six Eyes, was a shocker. Perhaps he set me up here, led me around by the nose. Not in a way to win the fight, but to ensure he could get his teammates to comply with his theory about the pass criteria for my bell test. Ha ha ha. What a kid. Within the forest. Sasuke stood where he had set up camp at the start of the test. He had been setting up his traps when he heard some type of explosion and rushed over to watch the fight. He arrived back just in time to see Naruto appear behind their distracted instructor, having apparently sent him flying. He watched as the fight escalated after Kakashi appeared frustrated from the attempt. From his distance and angle he couldn't hear them or see in great detail, but he watched Kakashi approach Naruto and appear shocked by something after appearing to land a solid clean blow on the boy, moving at speeds that had Sasuke's jaw drop. After Naruto left, he watched Kakashi contemplate something before laughing to himself and then vanishing. Assuming the man was moving on to him and Sakura, Sasuke began to prepare himself. He checked up on his traps and supplies before lying in wait. After a minute or two, he heard Sakura scream and assumed she had been taken out. Despite her annoyance, he wanted to go see if she was okay, but left it to Naruto, who was likely to have some free time from the silver-haired Jonin after their fight. After waiting a few minutes, he finally spotted Kakashi. The man was crouched on a tree branch, seemingly inspecting one of his traps. Though he wasn't worried, he had laid out a few that were like red herrings. They were easy to spot and maneuver around, but doing so would lead you into the path of another far superior trap. The idea was to allow the man to believe himself to be safe, them spring on him and overwhelm him alongside a constant barrage of traps. Well, it's well made, that I can attest to. However, when your opponent is of a higher level and age than you, it's best to assume that their experience outmatches even well-made traps. It was a good idea, and it shows good behavior and understanding that you were busy during the time I gave you while fighting Naruto, but you'll need more than this to get a bell. With that said, Kakashi purposefully set off the trap, causing a chain reaction that led off the hidden one Sasuke hoped would catch him off guard. Not all was lost. He had seen this one, but others were scattered about, and this time Kakashi would be engaged in active combat rather than having time to look it over. "Don't be so cocky," he yelled as he jumped in to fight the man. Kakashi was impressed with the boy. He was fluid and his moves clearly refined over years of practice. He deflected a punch aimed to his stomach and off to the side and marveled at how comfortably and quickly Sasuke adjusted his body to not only keep his momentum but cover the opening Kakashi made in his form. Had he wanted to, Kakashi could have hit him there, but against maybe even a lower-level Chunin, that opening would be impossible to exploit. Sasuke continued his barrage. He jumped up and pushed off a branch above him to gain power as he flipped and landed an axe kick which Kakashi blocked above his head with a forearm. Still, the blow almost buckled the arm. Sasuke then pushed off the arm and spun around again, aiming a kick to the man's neck with his right leg. The Jonin caught it with his left hand and held Sasuke's ankle. But not deterred, Sasuke merely raised himself up using the leverage and tried to stomp the man's face with his left foot. Once again, Kakashi caught the attack, only for Sasuke to again make another attempt. The boy brought his elbows down in a slam to the top of the Jonin's head and forced the man to flip him backwards, using his hold on both legs to do so, to throw the blow off course. Kakashi once again couldn't help but praise the ingenuity of those attacks. To maneuver himself 3 separate times to better positions while I was holding him and restricting movement is incredible. He continued to look for openings I made when blocking him and take advantage of them. Great thinking and battle sense. Unfortunately though, he's still quick to anger. He's competitive and gets frustrated when a fight's not going his way despite all the effort. As he had observed, Sasuke was getting angry, his punches and kicks losing some accuracy and finesse in exchange for wild power drawn from his frustration. Realizing he had already seen the best of Sasuke, he purposely set off a trap he had been avoiding, likely one of the reasons the child was so angry, and allowed the wires to wrap him up. Jumping at the opportunity, Sasuke changed his plans and upped the ante. Finally, take this. Fire style. Grand Fireball Jutsu. Sasuke launched his power move, the signature jutsu of his clan, in an attempt to burn the man who had so easily dealt with him and avoided all the traps he laid out. In doing so, he blocked his view of his opponent. After a few seconds, the fireball hit its target and erupted into flames. The surrounding trees all suffered the aftereffects and burned. When Sasuke moved over to the branch, he found nothing there, and was taken off guard when he was pushed off the tree. Looking up while falling, he seen the silver-haired man wave at him from the branch. Positioning himself to land properly, the boy looked up to his adversary in the trees. Your grasp of taijutsu is fantastic for someone of your age and position. It's likely that the only way to improve it is through real combat experience, along with fighting superior practitioners of the art. Of course, that's all technique and physical ability. It will also take a massive leap when you activate your Sharingan. Kakashi began his lecture, still looking down on the boy from above. He could see the more he said, the more annoyed Sasuke got, even if the boy recognized what he was saying was true. But you have a major weakness that is easy to exploit. What? What weakness? Sasuke forced himself to reply through ground teeth. He felt like this man was looking down on him, not in the physical sense but mentally. Your anger blinds you, Sasuke. You got annoyed, and so when shown an inch of success you threw everything at it, oblivious to the fact it could be a trap. I used your anger against you and lured you into using such a ninjutsu, and although an impressive feat, your application of it was wrong. You blinded yourself to my movements and tired yourself out, letting go of your chakra control to make it bigger. Perhaps that's a little hypocritical considering I lost track of an enemy earlier, but that was not of my own doing, Kakashi thought to himself. Sasuke looked incensed at the idea he was manipulated in such a way, but seemed to accept it. I want you to think about this. What could you have done better in this situation? How could you have made better use of my situation when tangled in wire? But just to drive home my point about losing view of an opponent. As he spoke those words, 2 hands popped up out of the ground below Sasuke and pulled him under up to his head. Sasuke was taken aback by this and looked up to the Kakashi he had been speaking to, only to see him smile before poofing into smoke to signify some type of clone jutsu. The hands that had dragged him under rose until the full body of Kakashi was standing before him. I'm sure Naruto will be along soon, likely with Sakura to free you. But consider this for when he comes. Make the right decision. And with that, the man jumped off into the trees. Elsewhere with Naruto and Sakura. Naruto looked over his shoulder at his companion. He had found her when Kakashi appeared in front of her. He had prepared himself to intervene should he try to physically combat her. But he simply placed her in a genjutsu, likely trying to measure her aptitude for the field. He left evidently disappointed when she fell prey to the first one and fainted from whatever she was shown. Naruto had dropped down then and woken and calmed her, explaining what had happened. He had then broached the subject he was there to speak with her about. At first the girl was vehemently against teaming with Naruto. She had thought he was trying to trick her into abandoning Sasuke and leaving him out. But thankfully her supposed intelligence kicked in when Naruto began to explain his theory. She was forced to consider the plausibility of his words, and to top it off, Naruto asked her what her chances were without his proposed plan. She had watched him go toe-to-toe with the man, unveiling tricks no one had seen before, moving at his peak, and he was only able to touch the bells. It made sense that Kakashi would up his level if he feared one of them might actually get a bell without meeting his true criteria to pass. That's why he tried so hard against Naruto but lowered his level for her. He likely wouldn't let them get a bell no matter their level until they came together and showed him what he wanted from them. Having decided Naruto was right, she joined him as they made their way to recruit Sasuke. He was likely to be the hardest to convince. He had a bit of something to prove, and would dislike the insinuation he couldn't get a bell from the man by himself. As they were moving, Naruto watched the fight between Sasuke and Kakashi from a distance, too long for Sakura to see lest she want to rush ahead. Naruto wanted to look at Sasuke in a different combat environment, but he also thought the boy would be easier to convince if he was defeated here, so long as he wasn't in too foul a mood to listen to them. Arriving after Kakashi buried the boy to the head in the ground, Naruto considered that he might have made an error in judgment there. Sasuke looked like he wanted to strangle the life out of the silver-haired man, and his ire would likely befall them solely due to connivance and proximity. "Oh no! Sasuke-kun, are you okay?" Sakura rushed forwards to the young Uchiha the moment she seen him. She fretted around him, panicked and angry at Kakashi for just leaving him like this. "Sakura, that's enough for now. Remember, there are things we need to do and time's running out. We likely only have 30 minutes left," Naruto called out to her, inadvertently bringing both people's attention to him. "Tisage, just leave, I can get out of here on my own." "I don't need you," Sasuke spoke and tried to struggle his way out, but it appeared he was well and truly stuck. "I'm afraid you do need us, and not just for this situation." Sasuke looked confused at the blonde, but still Naruto could hardly take him seriously, just being ahead and all. "I'm going to leave you in there." He received a shout and a glare at that proclamation. "Until after I've finished explaining." "I don't care what you're explaining, let me out." Sasuke didn't seem receptive to his idea, and he would lose Sakura as well if he continued to treat him like this. So Naruto thought to make it quick. "You will care when you don't pass." Now, with some quiet, Naruto began to put it simply, "This test isn't about the bells. They're a distraction meant to divert our attention away from the true purpose, and the reason there are only two is to incite conflict within this team." Naruto briefly explained. He received a blank stare in return. "What? That's ridiculous. What would Kakashi have to gain from doing something like that?" Sasuke reasoned. "A fair point if you believe that Kakashi is trying to pass us. I don't think he wants us to pass, especially if we don't have the qualities he wants from us. Kakashi has set this test up to separate us. He wants us to disregard his orders and mission parameters, and instead come at him as a team." Naruto reasoned. "It's impossible for us to beat him. Hatake Kakashi is legendary. He fought in the Third Great War as a Jonin when he was our age. He's known around the world, and within the village is considered at the top of the shinobi elite, only behind the Hokage and Sannin. That's the person we're supposed to take a bell from? I don't think so. It's a trick. The real test here is on us as a team. We're gonna have to come together, all three of us, and show him we won't abandon a teammate for a short-sighted goal. That we are trustworthy." Sasuke listened to the speech and considered the idea. "It's not unreasonable. We know he's tricky. He made me and Sakura come here without having breakfast, then made us wait hours before arriving. Plus, he wasn't trying as hard against me as he did Naruto. Surely he would have let Naruto get a bell had he been solely measuring our power and skill. It's as if he's waiting for something more. Make the right decision. Is this what he meant? Did he know Naruto had figured it out and would bring this idea to me? Then the right decision is Center of Training Ground 7. Kakashi stood waiting for something to happen. He had known Naruto was around when he incapacitated Sakura. While a little cold, he understood the boy's logic in waiting for him. He had just fought Kakashi and knew there was nothing to gain from it. He wouldn't pass by fighting even if he managed to get a bell. Plus, he assumed that had he tried to actually hurt her, Naruto would have intervened. Well, they're running out of time. Perhaps Naruto really couldn't convince Sasuke. Even after the tip I gave him, Kakashi sighed at the thought. Poor boy, so wound up in himself and his past, he's actively holding himself back. Though after my report, it's likely Naruto will be passed anyway. Hokage-sama isn't foolish enough to disregard such potential and power. Plus, he has actually figured it out. Kakashi was amused to see Naruto land in front of him. He sensed the other two lying in wait and couldn't help the genuine smile that bloomed because of it. Well, never mind. They've done it. Though let's see what we'll be working with synergy-wise as a team. Naruto watched the man in front of him. He knew already that they had come together, but wanted to see it in action. Naruto understood that and so signaled the first phase. It likely didn't matter the level of this attack, only that they had understood the test and come together. At least he hoped so. A second later and a hail of kunai came flying from the tree line. Sakura was within. They were all targeted at the Jonin and forced him to jump up into the air. As he did so, Sasuke appeared from his own spot. Having just finished weaving hand signs, he blew another fireball at the man, this time controlling the chakra and range better. Kakashi, though, substituted and allowed the summon log to take the hit. He tried to capitalize on Sasuke's blind spot created by the technique again to surprise him, but was met with resistance from Naruto, who appeared before him, blocking his path to Sasuke's back. The Uchiha spun around and leaped over Naruto and behind Kakashi. He found a kunai thrown into the air near him from Sakura with explosive tags lit on the handle and threw it back towards the two dueling shinobi. Naruto, who knew what was coming, warped away from the blast radius, having kept Kakashi busy as long as possible, not allowing him to retreat. As the blast went off, so too did the alarm, signifying the end of their time. Well, we did our best, but we spent too much time separate to really make an attempt for the bells here. But I think that went well, the sequence I mean. It wasn't super high level, but it had all the necessary basics done right. Naruto spoke to his teammates, who seemed nervous and seriously exhausted. Having not eaten and been awake for a while, Sasuke had struggled to use that second fireball and keep it under control, and Sakura never had particularly impressive stamina. I agree 100%, Naruto. This was almost a last desperate gambit with the remaining time. But it was exactly what I wanted. Kakashi spoke up, having avoided the tag via substitution again. You three need to understand that teamwork is everything here. We protect our team and in return they protect us. But it's more than that. We are each from the same place. We each protect the will of fire passed down. This is the most important lesson I will teach you, and it's not any of the shinobi arts. Those who abandon the rules are trash. That is true, but those who abandon their friends are worse than trash. An old friend said that to me, and that is what being a shinobi of Konoha means. This is the standard. Without this, you'll never be a shinobi here. Each of the three kids looked at the man as he gave his impassioned speech. The man seemed so genuine when revealing the words of his friend to them. You could truly see who Hatake Kakashi was in that moment. As Naruto mentioned, you didn't have much time but showed basic teamwork well. In truth, you passed the moment you banded together and disregarded the false objective. Kakashi looked at each of the kids before him. Sakura, you had the worst performance. You have little physical conditioning and stamina and are easily spotted as the weakest link in your team. You made the right choice to stay in cover and support how you could from a distance, Kakashi said to the saddened girl. She knew it was true, but it still hurt. That being said, it's not something that we can allow to remain unchanged. You made do and helped how you could here, but in the future you'll be capable of more. Perhaps even as a medic, or through supplementary genjutsu. Kakashi ended off with his plans and expectations, raising the girl's head a bit. She needed to know there was ways to help and get better from here on. She just needed to work at it. Sasuke, we already spoke earlier. You did a good job adapting the fireball here, and with Naruto covering your back you were perfectly safe to utilize your ninjutsu. I'll leave what we spoke of earlier to you. It's likely that it stems from something personal. To improve it you'll need to look inwards and explore your thoughts and feelings. Kakashi knew why he was angry, he understood it perfectly. But Sasuke needed to control it or someone else would, and they would use it against him as he did today. For your future, we'll work on your ninjutsu arsenal, expand upon what you know and add to it, so you're not so limited in choice that you have to adapt a jutsu to fit a different circumstance. Sasuke seemed unhappy about things. He didn't have the best day but seemed to perk up at the end. The boy craved strength and expanding his knowledge of jutsu would do just that. Naruto. Kakashi sighed and wondered what to do about the revelations regarding him. Actually, follow me and we can report together. Kakashi thought that was the best choice. It would spare him having to explain to the Hokage secondhand, though Naruto looked entirely none too pleased about it. Perhaps the boy only showed off what he did to Kakashi himself and had no desire to tell the Hokage. It wasn't strictly necessary to tell the Hokage your moves, the clans would surely riot, but if he asked you something, you normally did it. Well guys, that's all. You are now officially Genin of Konoha. Congratulations, Team 7. This is our training ground. Meet me here tomorrow at 9 a.m. and we'll discuss our schedule then. With that said, Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and then moved them to the Hokage's office. The front door was beautifully carved wood, and you certainly felt like you were walking into somewhere almost sacred. After knocking, Kakashi received a come-in from beyond the door. The voice was aged and he knew exactly who it belonged to. The most powerful man in Konoha, the Hokage. He looked to Naruto and noticed the straight face. The boy was usually so carefree and apathetic. He hoped this was the right call. Opening the door, he guided Naruto into the room where they seen it filled to the brim with jonin, all reporting their team's success or failure. The Hokage looked to him and then Naruto and showed a little shock before once again facing him. Well, Kakashi, you're right on time. He spoke in a voice so aged but powerful. It commanded respect even after decades of gruesome choices and actions had weighed down on him. How did your test go? Something interesting happen? He spoke to Kakashi but clearly questioning the presence of the boy he brought with him. Hokage-sama, Kakashi said with a bow, showing the legend the respect he deserved. Team 7 under Jonin Hatake Kakashi. He paused to build tension in the room. He heard Naruto sigh and almost felt the eye roll but didn't let it show on his face. After all, he was staring down the room with an intense look. Past, he revealed with a light voice and smile in his closed eye. The room was in silence. Nobody wanted to be the one to breath and have him reveal it was a joke. But he never did, just kept smiling at them. No way. Yes way, Kakashi answered. And we've got quite the story to tell, right, Naruto? Now with all eyes on him, Naruto cursed his sensei. This was ridiculous. Yeah, just don't try vote to kill me this time, or I'll take it personally. Oh, Kakashi thought. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. He laughed away the awkward silence in the room. Yeah, I'm going to hate this job. Hokage's office. Naruto was not particularly happy with his sensei. The man had carried him along to the Hokage's office, but apparently forgot or didn't care that it was currently occupied by all the other new Jonin sensei who were lined up in front of the Hokage's desk busy giving the final results and assessments of their new Genin teams. Only to then be interrupted by Kakashi arriving late and for some reason with one of said Genins in tow. It was no wonder they were all looking at him like that, although maybe they didn't like him either. His opening line might not have helped his case much there. He looked up into the eyes of a red-eyed woman, the one currently giving the report they had so rudely interrupted, given by her position a step forwards out of line towards the Hokage. She was looking back at them clearly annoyed, and his presence didn't seem to help. Though when she looked to him specifically and she caught his line of sight, the woman appeared to flinch very subtly, almost imperceivable, but she done so nevertheless. Not caring for her apparent issues meeting his eyes, Naruto instead studied the woman's chakra and determined she was weak. At least in most areas anyway. He could see the size of her chakra like a shroud surrounding her body, the size and opacity directly related to the chakra's amount and density. The larger the shroud, the larger the capacity, and the higher the opacity, the denser the chakra. This woman's shroud was comparatively small for a Jonin. It was undeniably unimpressive, and it was still comfortably see-through, meaning it was not very dense. However, there was one specific aspect that seemed impressive when Naruto looked a little deeper than the surface. The makeup of her chakra was highly imbalanced, drastically favoring the yin side of things, and leaving the yang in the dust. Chakra consisted of two separate but equal energies. Yin and yang, the spiritual and physical. Yin chakra was trained through meditation and improving one's mind and feelings. Yang chakra was trained through physical activity, improving the body's strength and stamina. Together, both spiritual and physical energies formed chakra. Her chakra was suited to the more spiritual side of techniques. She was likely smart and introspective. She was clearly a genjutsu user. People who were ninjutsu specialists had vastly denser chakra as well as favoring yang as it provided the power. Kakashi was like that. He had a large shroud which was hard to see through, proving its density, and yang chakra flowed in abundance within his system, though his transplanted eye actually added to the yin in his chakra, meaning it was still at impressive levels. This was all irrelevant to current events though, not that it actually mattered. All those deductions and thoughts occurred in how Naruto perceived time. For him, the minute-long detailed breakdown only occurred within a second to the outside world. Such was the power of the six eyes. He didn't slow time per se, only he was able to think, perceive, deduce, and consciously exist so much faster than everyone else. The six eyes were surely his greatest gift. The Mukujin was an incredible ability. Being able to manipulate space in many different ways, it opened up endless possibilities for offense and defense, but it could only reach its full potential when partnered with the eyes to support it. The six eyes granted Naruto with vast perception and immense brain processing power, allowing them to precisely manipulate the sophisticated powers of the limitless down to an atomic level. Each of the limitless techniques requires this type of complex chakra manipulation, making the pairing of the six eyes crucial to utilizing the limitless to its maximum potential. Though Naruto tried hard not to over-rely on them, he found that the more he burdened them, the quicker he tired. The six eyes manage and utilize chakra extremely efficiently, to the extent that when Naruto uses a chakra technique, the expenditure is so close to zero it's practically impossible to ever truly reach chakra exhaustion. But the eyes themselves use chakra to do so, meaning the more he relies on them to manage his chakra and help control and utilize his limitless techniques properly, the more strain he puts on them and himself. His greatest gift burdened him with his only true weakness. In truth, the only weakness of the six eyes is their immense power. They perceive so much in such extremely high detail that it can become too much to focus on. Eventually, I'll likely have to cover them to limit the information they process. Though I need them to use the basic limitless techniques currently. As I improve, I'll be able to use those without assistance. Then only the advanced techniques will require them to be uncovered, assuming I ever manage to learn them anyway. For Kurenai II, she made eye contact with the boy at Kakashi's side. She became entranced by the beauty of his eyes. She couldn't look away, but rather quickly they changed. Nothing physically changed in their appearance, but the feeling was so different. Rather than entrapped by beauty, she was now horrified by their aura. She felt like she was falling into them, being pulled into a never-ending spiraled abyss. She was scared, actually frightened at these eyes which felt like they were hovering over her shoulder, watching everything and digging deep into her body. They were shaking her to her core, but thankfully the seemingly never-ending second was over when he looked away towards the Hokage behind her. She was breathing heavy and actually sweating. He had done nothing but glance at her for a second, and this is what she was reduced to. What a horrible experience that was. What a demon! She hated that thought, but honestly, she now truly understood why people thought those eyes had such horrific origins. Naruto completely ignored the Jonin, who was apparently having something of a panic attack. Perhaps I'm actually quite ugly to inspire such a reaction from a beautiful woman. Naruto smiled at the ludicrous thought. He briefly looked to the Hokage. The old man was ridiculous. Never before had Naruto seen such chakra. In both size and density, he was unmatched. And yet there was still so much potential to be explored, so much these people just couldn't see or feel, sitting beyond their grasp, leaving the next stage forever out of their reach. The man seemed worried for his Jonin and gave him a speculative look before returning his attention to Kakashi, who was only looking more uncomfortable now than he had been. Serves him right, stupid eye patch. Though that might not be a terrible idea, my headband would help block the overstimulation. Oh well, it's not necessary now, but for the future. Naruto considered the idea to lighten the burden he felt, but dropped it for now, instead focusing on how Kakashi was going to handle this. The man likely hadn't considered this idea much beyond bringing him here. Naruto smirked at his sensei. He would enjoy watching along as Kakashi attempted to resolve this. It would likely go up in flames and Naruto would be there to laugh at the man when it did. Not out of malice, of course, that would be cruel. Simply out of joy at seeing Kakashi mess up so badly. Well, not totally out of malice, at least, just a little bit. Well, Kakashi, what has happened for such an unprecedented situation to occur at this report? I'm sure you were aware of the time frame for this. Yes. Naruto heard the Hokage ask. Surely something so important should be given center stage. Come, make your report, my boy. Kakashi already hated this job, and Naruto not so discreetly laughing at him wasn't helping things. The blonde looked like he wanted to point and make fun of him but was oh so admirably holding back. "Tch, stupid kid. He's just mad I threw him earlier." Kakashi cleared his throat to ease himself into the uncomfortable situation. "Hokage-sama, I have completed my test regarding the continuation of Team 7 consisting of Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura. I administered the bell test and after its conclusion have chosen to pass the team." "Yes, you mentioned that. I'm thrilled you found a group who were able to prove themselves to you. I'm sure you'll make a fine teacher, my boy," Hiruzen replied, appreciating the official report and confirmation of the team's pass, but hoping to lead Kakashi onto the bigger topic. "Thank you, Sandame-sama. The reason for the rather unusual company for my report is due to some new information coming to light regarding his unique abilities. I thought you would like to know and assumed it was best to allow him to explain it himself so as to avoid misrepresenting some aspect of it. But perhaps it was a bad time." Kakashi, in all honesty, had forgot what time the others would have finished. He hadn't meant to have so many eyes on Naruto, a poor mistake that could lead to distrust. Perhaps the boy thought he was trying to pressure him into revealing all his secrets and brought him into a room of Jonin and the Hokage to force his hand. He'd need to talk with him later, but for now he could help allow the blonde to escape with his cards still by his chest. "I apologize, Sandame-sama. Please forgive Naruto's intrusion and consider it my own. It was a lapse of judgment. Please allow him to return home. We have an early start tomorrow." He hoped he hadn't accidentally made the old man curious. He seriously hadn't thought this through. Hiruzen looked at Kakashi for a few moments before taking a draw of his pipe and agreeing to the request. But before Naruto could fully leave, he spoke up to him. "Naruto, my boy, I'm glad you're opening up with your team. It is vital they understand your skills and moveset. You don't need to tell them how to perform any techniques, but it's also not good to hide them from your team. It will only cause problems and indecision when you are forced to either reveal something or suffer the consequences. Indecision, even for a second, can kill. Maybe not you, but a teammate." Hiruzen spoke, having deduced the reason for Kakashi's 180, from hoping to have Naruto explain whatever ability he showed off, to trying to smuggle him out without needing to. He understood Naruto's reservations about discussing his abilities. Naruto had made them painfully clear with his first words in the room. He hadn't forgotten the events following the initial reveal of his eyes, the votes to kill him, as he put it. But he needed the boy to understand that refusing to use those abilities in fear or suspicion of everyone would only cause problems. "I will not force you to reveal your powers to me, child, but you should not hesitate to use them to their fullest in the protection of your team and mission." With his piece said, the Hokage allowed Naruto to leave, turning to face Kakashi a few seconds after the door closed. "That was indeed a lapse in judgment, Kakashi. I understand your wish to open him up, especially if he showed something new, which I assume he did. But he is not trusting of my position and those close to me. And unfortunately, your unforeseen punctuality coincidentally coincided with our scheduled report. Usually you're booked in 3 hours later than your peers." "Apologies, Hokage-sama. I got ahead of myself. It's just he may be far more talented than we had previously estimated." The Jonin was thankful that went smoothly. He could make the standard report without worrying about prying ears and eyes. Indeed. While on the subject of his talent, are you okay, Kurenai dear? You seemed a little faint for a second there." Hiruzen was intrigued as to what happened. He almost thought it to be a genjutsu effect, but there had been no chakra used in that moment. It appears she had just experienced a panic attack. Kurenai looked down, ashamed of her actions in front of her leader. "To think he trusted me with leading a team of graduates and I can't even hold eye contact with a boy," she thought bitterly. She had never considered herself to be weak-willed. She proudly accepted her reputation as being cold, brought about by her policy on men attempting to hit on her. She was proud to think herself someone who did the title of kunoichi proud and reversed the stereotypes that they were not as capable as male shinobi. The very same way Senju Tsunade had proven her naysayers wrong during the Second Great War. But apparently she had become arrogant or too comfortable in that belief. Straightening herself, she responded, "I'm fine. Thank you, Hokage-sama. It's just the first time I've truly seen his eyes. They were more intense than I was expecting. Forgive me, it won't happen again." She had previously believed a rumor that the boy had been faking them, that he was just seeking attention. Truly, how far she had fallen, to allow rumors spread by biased civilians to impact on her perception of a subject. Hiruzen continued looking to her for a moment before smiling and accepting the answer with a nod. "Yes, they can be quite uncomfortable indeed. I've even experienced it myself. Certainly fascinating though. The Kekei Genkai we see today in clans such as the Uchiha or Hyuga are hundreds if not perhaps thousands of years old. They all have their origins in what we believe to be the founding of shinobi, even if we don't know the exact details of their creation or evolution. For a seemingly brand new one to appear as Naruto-kun's is incredible. The professor was a man of much knowledge. It's the basis for his remarkable strength. He could see a jutsu performed once and deduce its components well enough to use it himself, so to be presented with such a question he had no answer to was as unlikely as it was exciting. Kakashi though wondered whether he should add on to that. "Naruto told me that he has two totally separate hereditary abilities. The limitless ability he briefly spoke of seems to be responsible for his combat prowess. At least in terms of true power, the six eyes almost seem supplementary to this new ability. They act as the foundation that allows him to build his skills, to use them to their fullest. If he had a child, would they inherit both? If not, would they be capable of truly using one without the other in an exceptional way?" Kakashi had a lot to think about, but Naruto said he'd tell him anyway. He would trust his new student to use these abilities to keep his teammates safe. If he'd done that, Kakashi could truly ask for no more. With the unexpected situation now resolved, Hiruzen could continue with the original reason for this gathering. He grabbed his pipe and began to address his jonin. "So, it's all settled then." The room turned their attention back to the Hokage and waited for him to finish his pipe before continuing. "The teams 1 to 6 have sadly not passed. They will be free to return to the academy, join the force as a probationary genin and await another jonin who wishes to take on a team, or even leave the shinobi program and find a life as a civilian. Those sensei who are within that bracket, you are free to continue your standard duties and are dismissed." With that, the 6 mentioned jonin left the office and Hiruzen focused on the 3 remaining in front of him. He was glad these 3 had passed their teams. He was sure they would raise fine young shinobi who would make him proud. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the majority of genin who passed this year are children of major clans, though more important than even just that. This year's group has much promise, that is for certain, but also, they are the children of clan heads and despite their age and inexperience hold power within the village's political climate. You are now in charge of raising those who will lead the village in years to come. I'm sure you will take this role seriously, but I want you to push them. I hope to make a good showing in the Chunin exams that will take place here in 6 months. Each sensei was surprised to hear the Sandaime push for them to enter a new team so quickly, but with the potential this year had it could lead to a rousing victory for the Leaf in its home ground. It would make sense to push for a good showing in these next exams. Teams 7, 8 and 10 are now officially genin of Konoha. You are free to leave. Report to the mission desk whenever you choose to administer their first mission. I always enjoy the reactions to what their new life will entail. Hiruzen smiled thinking about it. Especially Naruto's reaction. It would likely involve a lot of complaining and bragging, and he couldn't wait to see Kakashi deal with kids. With all said and done, the Hokage was left to deal with his paperwork he had been putting off, though he couldn't help but wonder what new power Kakashi had wanted Naruto to explain. I'm sure it's something incredible we've never seen before. I hope to see it during the upcoming exams. I'm positive Team 7 will make it there and surprise us all. Konoha streets, Naruto. Having left the Hokage's office only a few minutes ago, Naruto found himself wandering the streets with nothing to do. It was still pretty early on in the day and he had no commitments other than meeting his new team and sensei tomorrow, for what he assumed would either be their first mission or a training session revolving around operating within a group. Deciding to just take a wander around the village until he found something to do, He set off in no particular direction, though he didn't have to wait long before he ran into some familiar faces. Some of the students from his class appeared to be heading into a beef barbecue restaurant. If he remembered correctly, they were Team 10, whose Jonin-sensei he must have just met. Meeting Shikamaru and Chuji at the door, he asked to join them briefly. Once seated inside, Naruto looked over his current company, finding himself intrigued as to their team's composition and purpose. Shikamaru and Chuji paid him little attention. Well, Chuji did anyway. The former was trying to act like he wasn't observing him by hiding his calculating eyes behind an air of indifference and lethargy, which likely wasn't totally fake. Shikamaru was a relatively tall, lanky boy with dark hair pulled into a spiky ponytail at the back of his head. He wore an open gray jacket over a chain shirt underneath. Naruto thought the boy had interesting powers, dealing with shadows that at their base level restricted movement, but when wielded by experienced hands could do much more. The Nara had a lot of room to grow into. Chuji was a kind, chubby boy with spiky brown hair held in a weird headband that allowed tufts of it to fall through the top while the rest was covered like a hat. He had swirl marks on his cheeks, not too dissimilar to the swirls on his shoulders, and wore a loose green jacket. Chuji himself had interesting powers, the ability to increase his size and therefore power either in specific areas or over his whole body was perhaps much more one-note in terms of use and strategy than his own powers or even his Nara friends were, but still a powerful ability. Lastly, Naruto turned his attention to Ino, who was just sitting down having been walking behind her two teammates, apparently none too pleased to be in their company. She was a pretty blonde, much like himself, with green eyes. She wore a purple top and matching skirt with bandages wrapped around her stomach, arms, and legs. Her ability was interesting too, but better suited to psychological warfare and espionage than to direct battle. She was someone within his class he quite liked. She was fun and easy to annoy, but also quick-witted. She was very emotionally intelligent, a different type of smart to Shika and even Naruto himself to an extent. She understood people and wasn't afraid to use that to her advantage. She's someone I could get along with, good cop, bad cop style. I'm the smart, strong, and handsome one who solves all the mysteries, and she could be, well, maybe I don't need her to have fun, I'm enough on my own. Point is, she can make the rest of this day somewhat interesting. Considering your dismal face, Shika, I take it your team passed? Naruto asked while resting his head on his hand, which was leaning on the windowsill. The addressed boy turned fully to him and let out a resigned sigh before answering. We did. Though I wish he didn't have us do that ridiculous obstacle course, the dark-haired boy grumbled. Chuji picked up from his teammate. Asuma-sensei is nice though. He offered to pay for this meal and said he would meet us here after briefing the Hokage on the team. The boy spoke around a mouthful of beef. Oh, so you guys had to do an obstacle course, huh? That's interesting. It's quite different from the trial we went through, Naruto said to the table, though he continued in his thoughts. It seems each sensei had creative control over their own tests. They could test their potential team for any number of abilities and hidden potential just by tweaking their criteria. Kakashi wanted teamwork and so focused on that. This Asuma guy seemingly wanted to test mobility and quick thinking. It was a simple concept. Each sensei gets to test for aspects they most want in their teams. It means if you pass the test, the chemistry with your team and sensei is likely to be at least passable for mission work. Sometimes the most effective strategy is the simplest. There's no need for grand schemes all the time. Naruto already knew that Kakashi had influenced the test they had faced, but it was interesting nonetheless to see how the other sensei approached it differently. For the first time since he arrived, Ino spoke up, breaking him from his thoughts. Different? Well, whatever, I just can't wait to go on some missions. Maybe we'll get to save a handsome prince, with dark hair and nice eyes. He'll fall madly in love with my beauty and… Though she had started off talking to Naruto, she quickly lost interest and fell into her love story. Naruto only laughed at the girl, which drew her ire. What, she spat, can't a girl dream without being laughed at? She cast a glare at Shikamaru, who, although didn't laugh as brazenly as Naruto had, did let out a quiet, troublesome. It's not that, Ino. I don't think we're going to be doing anything like that for a while. The Nara supplied to distract Ino from his use of that word again, though what he just said did catch Naruto's attention. Oh? Now that is an interesting idea, my lazy friend. Why do you think that? Naruto gave a smirk but only leaned further back into his hand and closed his eyes. Had he not been the one to ask the question, you would assume he was as uninterested as the Nara. Giving a sigh at having to talk so much and to someone as troublesome as Naruto, Shikamaru continued, "It's just not logical. Sure, we're now officially genin and have a registered team, but we haven't had any time to train. It would be too risky to send naive and untested shinobi on missions that the village relies on for money. Firstly, it risks the village's reputation if they fail, and secondly, it risks future assets to the village. Losing a shinobi is a big hit, not only for profit but strong or upcoming shinobi serve as a deterrent of war. If Asuma-sensei or one of us were to get seriously hurt or killed because we weren't up to scratch, the village has a lot to lose both presently and in our potential future contributions." Finally finishing his speech, Shikamaru found himself leaning forward facing Naruto. His two teammates had been stunned into brief silence, having never considered the implications of missions and their outcomes too deeply. But while he registered their looks and voices now whispering behind him, he was focused on the boy sitting casually opposite him. Naruto was someone he couldn't figure out. The boy acted so stupid, but there were flashes of something far more serious and far more sinister hiding behind those eyes of his. Shikamaru wasn't totally convinced that Uzumaki Naruto was a good person. Felt like an act, but to what end? He watched and waited for the reaction of the boy opposite him. He was sure to get a quick look at least at what lay beyond what Naruto allowed others to see. Naruto sat forward slowly and remained still for a second, but it felt like an hour to him. The tension was getting palpable, his hands beginning to sweat as he rubbed and fumbled with them. Then, "Ahaman, you're totally right." Naruto shot up abruptly, looking panicked, eyes wide and hand running through his hair. "I can't believe I thought we would finally do something cool," he complained. He let out a sigh, looking for all the world like someone told him his pet just died. "Well, I'll see you guys some other time," he said, leaving with a rain cloud over his head and dragging his heels out the door. After a small disbelieving silence, Ino spoke once more. *sigh*, what an idiot. I can't believe that guy is so strong. He's so immature, honestly. I thought he was going to say something interesting. Ino grumbled behind the Nara as she pouted her lips and kicked her feet together. "Well, Naruto has always been a bit unpredictable," the ever-kind Chuji spoke, while once more reaching for some beef. Shikamaru, though, couldn't help but feel nervous. He had also thought Naruto was actually going to answer his speech with a serious response. He had been pulled in by his body language and presence, and was fully expecting anything but what Naruto had actually said. That had to be intentional. Was Naruto messing with him? Did he just go through all that to annoy him? Or was he actually looking to gain something, and if he left, did he gain whatever it was he was looking for? Resting back against the chair, the intelligent Nara watched Naruto wander away from the window. The blonde boy was still walking like someone shot him, bawling his eyes out and annoying the people nearby who looked as frustrated as he felt. With that, a ringing noise brought his attention behind him and to the door where Asuma was entering with a smile. "Man, this day cannot get any more troublesome," he thought with a mental sigh. Naruto, however, was having a blast, walking up to people and pretending to cry on their clothes and even blowing his nose on a man's sleeve. Having made enough of a scene, he stood up properly, gave the passing people a wink and smile before disappearing, leaving only his joyous laughter behind. After all, he had a big day tomorrow. "Well, Shika sure is a smart kid. A little boring, but we can't all be perfect." Naruto considered the words the Nara had said. He had been sure there was more to come from his sensei, and had come to a similar conclusion to his shadowy friend. It was unlikely that such green behind-the-ears shinobi would be given anything of relevance to do. They would contribute in other far less exciting ways. He liked the Nara, though, smart, cautious, and perceptive. A little too easy to deceive, but he would only get better with experience. Arriving inside his apartment after successfully wasting a little bit of the day, he sat by his desk and waited for the day to end. Missions desk 2 months after the bell test. Sarutobi Hiruzen was a fantastic shinobi and sensei. He had trained 3 of the foremost shinobi to come out of Konoha since the reign of Senju Tobarama, his own master. And yet right now he was impressed. "Naruto, we're in the presence of the Hokage. At least try to pretend like you give a shit." That had been one of his top jonin. a man feared and renowned throughout the nations as the Copy Ninja Kakashi, a title befitting the man's illustrious career. Right now, however, the man looked a step from death's door, ready to keel over and die the moment he was given the chance. It was truly an incredibly impressive feat for a squad of newly graduated genin to kill such a powerful jonin, and Naruto seemed to be about to achieve that by way of sheer annoyance. The boy had been a handful for Kakashi these past few months, though Hiruzen had expected as much. Naruto was a strong boy with a massive ego and no patience or self-control, mixing that with the laborious D-rank missions he was being forced to partake in, plus the monotonous teamwork-centered training that done little other than challenge his temper at the slow progress, and Hiruzen was actually surprised he hadn't genuinely tried his hand at murdering his sensei. Perhaps it's past time we throw him a bone. They are well beyond capable of performing a C-rank, and as I told each team's sensei, I want these genin teams to perform at the exams in 4 months' time. If they aren't given true mission experience, it will only hold them back. Having made up his mind, the Hokage cleared his throat to begin addressing the team before him. Kakashi, how would you rate your team in overall efficiency during mission work? Hiruzen looked to the young man. Kakashi raised his head from staring holes into Naruto as he was addressed and took a step forwards. Hokage-sama, while they are still inexperienced, Team 7 likely possesses the most talent and potential within the genin crop. Kakashi began his report. They perform missions with diligence and care, while the majority of them do anyway, he added under his breath. And their skills and team coordination are above expected levels as well. With his piece said, Kakashi took his place by his charge's side again and awaited his leader's decision. Hiruzen knew all of this anyway but asked to ascertain his jonin's thoughts on his current internal debate. With Kakashi's vote of confidence, though, the old legend made up his mind. Very well then. Team 7, I am proud to administer you your first C-rank assignment. Please Irika-kun send Tazuna in for me. Now that announcement gathered the group's attention. Like Kakashi had said, this group held massive potential, far too much to be wasted cleaning houses and catching runaway cats for too much longer. Hiruzen had long since accepted that missions came with danger. As a shinobi, it was something they each came to terms with personally, but sending newly graduated genin, and more importantly children, to their possible deaths was never an easy choice to make. But babying them for too long, holding them within the village to protect them from the world would only stunt their growth, clip their wings if you will. He needed to let the young birds fly free, to truly grow from real and possibly life-threatening situations. Hiruzen knew it was time to test their mettle. Kakashi stood silent. He knew what his Hokage meant by asking him what he thought of this team. And yet when he heard those words, he couldn't help but regret his answer. Not due to his team's lack of power or the fact they were ill-equipped to handle such a mission, as in truth he could do a C-rank single-handedly with his eyes closed and a hand tied behind his back, but because he had already grown far more attached to his cute little genin team than he had expected. Sure, Sasuke was a bit of a punk, a boy with some serious mental health issues and in need of major therapy, but at the same time, he had flashes of an enthusiastic, competitive boy who had some serious potential. Sakura was a little rough around the edges, but she was a sweet girl who had a brilliant mind, one that could even rival a Nara in her preferred fields. And Naruto, well, Kakashi was pretty sure Naruto thought well enough of himself without him singing his praises too much, even if only in his thoughts. Together they made one hell of a team, and he was sure they would achieve much in their long lives still yet to come. But that was the problem, wasn't it? What if those lives weren't destined to be as long as he hoped? What if those potential achievements would never come to be? And all because they went on a mission too early, a mission away from the village just a month too soon, and it could all come tumbling down for them. The silver-haired jonin watched Irika lead an older-looking man into the room, and despite his lingering reservations decided to inspect his new client. His clothes, which consisted of a dark sleeveless top and matching shorts, were ragged and clearly well worn. Whether from manual work or poverty, Kakashi couldn't yet tell. He wore a straw hat over thinning gray hair that matched his full beard, glasses covered his dark eyes, and he sported a tanned complexion, likely from living in warm sunny weather for his whole life. The man was aged, probably in his early 60s or at the youngest late 50s, but he clearly took care of himself. Well, other than the bottle of liquor that seemed very well worn though years of heavy use. Kakashi watched as the man's eyes, bleary from alcohol, scanned him for all but a second before moving onto the genin at his side. His eyes seemed to fill with more and more annoyance as he moved from one genin to the next, when he ended on Naruto, who was standing with his hands in his pockets, eyes closed and head leaned back so his face was pointed straight at the ceiling. He seemed to finally lose control of his mouth. Hokage, I thought you promised me a team of super ninja, not these stupid little brats. The yellow one can't even look in the right direction, how's he gonna protect me? Huh. The man slurred his words slightly, further proving Kakashi's thoughts that the bottle of liquor was worn from many years of overuse. Though Kakashi feared the reaction from his blonde-haired charge, whom had just been insulted, the boy offered no outward reaction to the words, only continuing to face the selling with closed eyes. In place of the expected retort from Naruto, the Hokage spoke again. Well, Tazuna-san, if you are unhappy with the provided team, we can swap them for another. Although in all honesty, this team of genin along with their Jonin-sensei are extremely talented and you're unlikely to receive anyone superior, Hiruzen informed him. If you want a team of more experienced shinobi, you would need to pay for a higher mission level, as C-rank missions like this, with little to no expected combat with bandits or issues, are run by these team formats. Kakashi noticed the man shrink in on himself as the Hokage broke him down and noticed the uncertain and weary glances he made between him and his team. But he really perked up when he noticed the fear and panic cross the man's face when the issue of mission rankings, pay and combat were mentioned. In all his years as a shinobi, Kakashi had met many chancers who lied to the village in order to reduce the cost of a mission. They normally died along with the team sent with them as they faced troubles beyond their skills, and this man reeked of someone with a big secret to hide. He looked to his leader to make sure he had caught on, and only met with the man's knowing and exacerbated eyes for a second before they both turned their attention back to the man before them. Well, I suppose this team will do for me then. But I expect these brats to pull their own weight at least. Tazuna finished lamely, trying and failing, at least to Kakashi's experienced senses, to appear calm and offering a begrudging acceptance, as if he was doing them a favor by allowing them to accompany him. The Hokage favored the man with a polite and aged smile before speaking. Fantastic. Then Kakashi, Tazuna-san is now in your care, and Team 7 good luck on your first C-rank mission. Wait first, was all Tazuna managed to say before he was lead out of the room by Irika. All right team, meet me at the south gate in 15 minutes. Prepare as you were instructed at the academy. Remember, we want to carry light while still being fully prepared and equipped. I'll meet you there. The team soon left to prepare for the unexpected mission. Kakashi thought they seemed confident, a little nervous but not scared, which was good. Naruto left without changing from how he'd stood in the room, seeming completely unbothered. Now though, with the company of only the Hokage and the hidden ANBU, he could get to the important issue at hand. Hokage-sama, if you don't mind my asking, why are we allowing this man's charade to continue? It's obvious this mission is not as it seems. Kakashi spoke to his leader. Kakashi, my boy, what does the Leaf Village believe in above all else within its shinobi core? What have I tried to instill into every youngster rising through our academies, even above mission parameters and guides? Hiruzen questioned. The will of fire, sir, was the immediate response. Exactly. The belief that we as a people are stronger together, that it is not the bricks or paths or even the trees that make up the Leaf Village but its people. We are the village hidden in the leaves, not this place where we happen to have built upon. The belief that the people of this village will always have your back. And although not everyone subscribes to this idea, I believe in it. But it extends beyond just our people. It applies to anyone who seeks our aid. To be honest with you, Kakashi, we know what is happening in the wave right now. Hiruzen revealed. There is a man there who goes by Gojo. He has taken over the country by essentially forcing a monopoly over their business and industry. He has taken the whole country captive in order to plunder it to its last piece of worth. You and your team are going along with Tazuna, but there are other, more secretive shinobi going to deal with Gojo. So, my team is a diversion? To be seen as Tazuna's protectors by this Gojo, and to draw his attention and allow the others to sneak in. Kakashi finished. Yes, essentially, you will complete your mission and they will complete theirs, but they are not an aspect of the leaf we want to be associated with, as you well know, my boy, so your team is more than a simple distraction. You are putting our best foot forwards, selflessly saving a man and his country for no gain whatsoever despite their lies, showing our up-and-coming stars and becoming heroes. Quite the fairy tale story for a first big mission, wouldn't you say? Yet you speak of helping others based in the belief of the will of fire? From our own goodness and not for any gain? Is that not hypocritical, sir? Despite saying this, Kakashi meant no disrespect. He would lay down his life within a heartbeat for the man in front of him, and it would only partly be because of his position as Hokage. No, Kakashi would die for Hiruzen, not necessarily the position he held. But he truly wanted to understand the man's views. Hiruzen gave a chuckle before responding, "Yes, I suppose it is, but it all comes down to one thing. The people of this village are all my family, and I have to take into account their well-being as well. It is perhaps why there have been so many wars in this world of ours. Love for one's family inherently means placing their value and worth above someone else's, and the actions you take to protect them will undoubtedly hurt someone else's loved one and breed hate between you." Minato was beloved in this village for his deeds in the Third Great War, and yet those same deeds made him a monster whose death was celebrated in villages like the Stone. It is something you must think about, Kakashi. Is it right to kill in order to protect your loved one despite knowing you are taking away another's? When you become Hokage, will you make the same choices as I? Or will you be better than me and value everyone's life equally regardless of the potential harm it brings here? Kakashi stood silent for a moment before taking in his leader's expression. It was one of infinite compassion and yet one with equally infinite resolve. Resolve to do as was necessary in the protection of his home and people. "Wait, when I become Hokage?" he spoke back. Hiruzen only smiled at him before he was waved away and told he was running late to meet his team. Konoha South Gate, Naruto. Naruto sat by the south gate, his back leaned against one of the giant doors that facilitated entrance and exit to the village. Next to him, Sakura and Sasuke stood. Both of them were double and triple checking their bags, clearly anxious about the coming mission, and their sensei's tardiness was only compiling on top of it. For what was not the first time, Naruto thought there was actually some deeper reason behind Kakashi's constant lateness. Maybe he wanted to force them to consider what they were about to partake in as they sat around waiting for him. Maybe one of them would get cold feet and chicken out because he gave them time to think, rather than just diving into it before any deep thoughts on it could occur. Well, Naruto doubted that. Sasuke certainly wouldn't chicken out. It would go against his very purpose. And Naruto thought Sakura was beyond the stage where she would as well. She may be scared and want to do it, but he had faith that she wanted to improve herself more and that it would be that desire that won out in the end. Looking over to the check-in booth on the other side of the road, Naruto spotted their charge for the foreseeable future speaking with the gate guards. The man was looking calmer now than how he felt within the Hokage Tower. He held himself with some bravado and confidence as he chatted away to the guards. Naruto was feeling pretty good about this mission. It was true that Team 7 was still a new and untested team, especially within these circumstances of missions beyond the reaches of Konoha, but he thought it was time they started really pushing themselves. He had been feeling somewhat stagnant for years now. Most of his power came by way of learning and mastering both the Six Eyes and limitless bloodlines he was blessed with. The problem being the insane complexity in both understanding the techniques and the complex chakra manipulation required to use them. His most recent progress was the ability to use the reverse technique called Red, that he used against Kakashi. It involved reversing the flow of chakra and in turn creating the opposite effect of his technique Blue. But using reverse chakra techniques was no easy feat, and his application of it was so far limited to utilizing Red, and even then, the output and effect of the ability were severely nerfed from what it had the potential to do. He needed to continue to grow. He was beginning to grow frustrated at his inability to master the reverse application of chakra in a sizable way. It was a new and novel experience for him, and he decided he didn't like it one bit. Looking away from Tazuna just before the man turned his head, perhaps feeling the unsettling feeling many had when he looked at them, Naruto smiled slightly as he faced the never-ending expanse of the world beyond his home village. Whatever happened in this mission, Naruto swore he would make the most of it. It was high time he really kicked it into gear and began moving forwards in exploring his potential, and this mission would be the perfect first step. Konoha South Gate, Naruto. With Kakashi having finally arrived, Team 7 was set to head off on their first journey beyond the Leaf Village walls. They were to embark on a C-rank mission to escort Tazuna, a bridge builder from Nami no Kuni, the Land of Waves, back to his home, protecting him from any run-of-the-mill bandits he may encounter along his path, and supporting him until the completion of his bridge construction. At least that was the mission as viewed from the surface, but when one looked underneath, there was more brewing than a simple escort mission. After Kakashi's arrival, the somewhat confident and relaxed mood that had previously settled over both the team and their charge had evaporated. Tempers and nerves were now running high for most of the group, though for different reasons. Naruto first looked to his fellow genin team and classmates. They appeared nervous, if the constant twitching of their hands and repositioning of their feet was anything to go by. Sakura was more obvious, the fear and apprehension plain to see on her face as well as in her body language. She had improved as much as one can in a few months of basic training. Nothing new with her individual skills, but more polished movement and other basics along with the team exercises drilled into them. She had done well to apply herself properly to physical training, likely for the first time in her life, as her preferred field always was the theoretical side of shinobi life, though she still complained about it constantly. Sasuke was much better at hiding his nerves, the only giveaways being his clenched teeth, jumpy eyes that moved from one thing to the next like he was already scanning his surroundings for enemies, and his generally more tense and rigid posture than was usual for him. But what both of them had in common, though more evident and stronger in Sasuke, was the fire burning in their eyes, the determination and excitement to go on a mission of this magnitude and further themselves. Naruto would consider that more than enough for them to be qualified for this mission, should it go as planned. Tazuna, though showing the same signs of nervousness as his teammates, was doing so for much different reasons Naruto was still working out, but thought he had the general gist of. Basically, he's full of shit, Naruto thought to himself. From the worry about our team strength when he first met and saw us, to even requesting a new squad with stronger shinobi, he's worried about more than generic run-of-the-mill bandits he may not even encounter. No, there's something or someone specific he has in mind that might be targeting him. Continuing to consider this, Naruto decided that there was nothing that needed to be done. He could allow this to play out as the Hokage and his sensei had likely planned, though he was unsure exactly as to what that plan would entail. Speaking of his sensei, the man had arrived a few minutes ago and was in the process of signing them out of the village. Appearing to have finished with that, he began making his way back over to them. Kakashi gave nothing away. He walked with the exact same ease as always. His face, already mostly covered, gave even less away, as his only open eye was shut in a smile as he approached. Okay, is everyone ready to go? Remember, once we set off, we won't be back until this mission is complete, so make sure you're ready, Kakashi said after gathering the group together. With everyone confirming their preparedness and Tazuna antsy to get a move on, the group departed the Leaf, moving under the large gates and walls of the village and out into the endless sea of trees surrounding them. Getting into a standard formation with Naruto standing in front, Sakura on the left side, Sasuke on the right side and Kakashi at the back, they surrounded Tazuna, leaving him to walk in the middle of their formation, and began walking along the path leading away from their home at a sedate pace. Having a civilian within the group meant that they would have to travel at civilian speeds, which meant days filled with nothing but walking awaited them. After a few hours of walking in uncomfortable silence, at least it was uncomfortable for her, Sakura spoke up to ask their client a question. "Excuse me, Mr. Tazuna?" The man grunted, barely turned his head to her, and paused his flask at his lips for merely a second before taking his swig as intended. "What?" he asked with blatant annoyance at the girl laced within his drunk and slurred voice. "Well, I was just wondering what the Land of Waves is like. I read that it's a large trading hub, especially with shipping goods. If you've hired foreign shinobi, that must mean that you don't have your own, right?" Sakura asked after a brief moment of hesitation from his clear frustration at being spoken to. Tazuna almost seemed to flinch briefly as she mentioned their shipping industry, which Naruto noticed and filed away. Kakashi appeared to be ignoring them off in his own little world reading a book, but Naruto assumed he was listening intently as well. "Well, you sure know your stuff, girly, haha," the bridge builder stuttered. Wave was... is a beautiful place just off the coast of Hai no Kuni, the Land of Fire. It's far too small to have its own shinobi village, and the people there aren't so trusting of you shinobi folks anyway, he answered. Sakura looked shocked by that revelation. Why wouldn't they trust us? She asked back. The bridge builder finally stopped drinking and set his flask away into his bag to answer the girl. Well, for a small civilian town who deals in trade, having you shinobi mulling around throwing those dangerous abilities about without care for collateral makes people nervous. The abilities shinobi have may seem to be the norm for you, who's grown up cozy in a big shinobi village like Konoha, but they are well beyond supernatural to your average working folk in Wave. Powers like that are seen as unnatural just because they are so rare out with shinobi settlements. The answer from Tazuna was an interesting one, though it seemed to upset Sakura more than satiate her curiosity. Naruto, though, understood. His abilities would already be considered incredibly strong in any of the shinobi villages, but in a small out-of-the-way village like Tazuna's home, they would be enough for him to rule them as some kind of deity. To live your life knowing there were people with powers beyond your wildest imagination out there, and that one day they might set their sights on you would make anyone nervous. Tazuna continued his speech to Sakura, explaining how the Wave citizens lived their lives, fending for their own, and how being reliant on the sea and shipping had left them somewhat cut off from the mainland, both literally and in terms of news and communication. But as he spoke, Naruto was only now half paying attention to the man's words. Instead, his focus was on a seemingly nondescript puddle along their path. And that's partly why I'm building this bridge. The people of Wave have been too cut off from society. We need this connection to the mainland, so we aren't so dependent on shipping trade. Tazuna was getting worked up as he spoke. But as he finished, he seemed to shut in on himself, briefly glancing to the jonin among them as if to make sure the man hadn't heard what he just said. Though instead of getting the confirmation he was after, he was met with the sight of the man charged with his protection being shredded into two pieces as two people appeared at either side of him with a spiked chain connecting their hands. Time stood still for a brief moment as blood flew everywhere and the jonin's separated corpse fell to the ground with a wet thump. Tazuna fell into shock, unable to look away from the mangled body of the strongest among them. The two shinobi, who were covered in long black coats and masks, almost reminiscent of breathing apparatus used underwater, looked to their true target now that the biggest threat to their mission was dead. Seeing Tazuna in his state of shock, they took the opportunity granted to them and shot forwards once again, aiming to bisect him as they had done with the weak gray-haired man. Tazuna, seeing he was now the target they had in their sights, attempted to scramble backwards and run away, only for him to trip over his own feet due to his panic and fall helplessly on his ass. Time seemed to slow for him as he watched his soon-to-be murderers approach him. Seeing his reflection looking back at him from their spiked chain, he looked upon the pitiful state he was reduced to. All he could think about in that moment before death was his family he would leave behind. Tsunami, Inari, Kaiza. I'm sorry. With that last thought, Tazuna expected his death to come and with closed eyes awaited the pain he assumed would soon overtake him. Only it never did. When he managed to build up the courage, he opened his eyes and was met with the sight of the dark-haired genin standing protectively before him. He couldn't see clearly what was beyond the boy in front of him due to a large cloud of dust that had been kicked up. With Naruto, 10 seconds ago. Naruto continued to discreetly observe the puddle as they walked, the six eyes allowing him to clearly see the genjutsu at play, as well as the two shinobi who were using it to hide. Looking over his shoulder under the guise of listening more closely to what the bridge builder was saying, he looked to his sensei, knowing the man would have spotted it as well. Kakashi only looked over the top of his book, smiled, and using the hand stuffed in his pocket made the gesture to hold back, knowing that the six eyes Naruto possessed would allow him to see the gesture despite the fabric blocking it from everyone else's view. With instructions from his sensei, Naruto allowed the events to play out without interfering. Even when he watched Kakashi be torn to shreds, he didn't panic. Instead, he waited. When the two mysterious shinobi attackers looked for their next target and settled on Tazuna, he didn't act. When he watched them begin to charge forwards from their position, near his sensei's corpse, and ready their weapon to kill his charge who had fallen over trying to escape, he remained still. Only when he seen Sasuke flash in front of Tazuna, kunai at the ready to fend off the attackers, did Naruto act. Charging forwards faster than even any of the surrounding shinobi could see, he delivered an axe kick to the center of the chain connecting the two adversaries, activating the neutral application of Limitless around his leg while doing so. The force of the kick pinned the chain into the ground and kicked up a large cloud of dust as his foot met the ground. The two attackers' momentum was halted abruptly as their arms connected by the chain were roughly pulled back. Both men shouted in pain as their shoulders were dislocated from their sockets by the force of their own momentum being stopped. Naruto then appeared in between the two men, arms outstretched, and hands pointed outwards like two guns. Chakra technique reversal. Red twin guns was all that the attackers heard before they were met with an oppressing force slamming into them. The force pushed them apart, snapping the chain connecting them and sending them flying out either side of the cloud of dust. Their flight was only halted when their backs hit into the trees which surrounded the path on both sides with bone-crushing force. The use of red also cleared the area of dust, allowing the onlookers to see Naruto standing in front of a gaping hole in the path, his hands now down by his side and his brow creased in annoyance. TCH. Still can't get a proper hold on that damn technique. The amount of chakra I used there was easily equal to an A-rank jutsu, but simply overloading it with more chakra doesn't actually improve the power at all. As long as I can't get a proper handle of chakra reversal, the output will either be limited like it was now, or the technique could outright fail to initiate. When the onlookers turned their heads, they could see both attackers sitting slumped at the base of two trees on opposite sides of the path from one another. They looked to be barely holding on to consciousness and unable to move, and if the indents into the trees were any measure of how hard they hit them, it was understandable why they weren't. Looking back to Naruto, they found him staring down at the body of their sensei. Upon the reminder of his tragic and gruesome fate, Sakura puked her guts out on the side of the path, her body crumbling as she was forced onto her knees, unable to even care she was sitting in her own sick, her body racked with trembles, and she cried, the release of the buildup of all the emotions she had experienced. She had turned when she heard something behind her and so was spared the sight of Kakashi being bisected. But the sight of his body lying in half on the ground was just as sickening, only to then be unable to do anything as her sensei's murderers charged at the man she was to protect. She watched as Sasuke took action straight away and hated herself for her weakness being shown in front of him. She felt, at first, some relief that Naruto must have clearly been in a similar position to her, as she hadn't seen him move yet, only to have that thrown back in her face when it was revealed he had dealt with the situation with no difficulty. Not only was he unaffected by the fear of being attacked, but he appeared unaffected by the death of their sensei. She looked up at Naruto, finally able to tear her eyes away from the bisected body, only to see him looking up into the trees. She followed his line of sight but didn't see anything, until a blur shot through the trees from where they were looking. Sakura felt all hope leave her. Of course there were more shinobi surrounding them. They were likely stronger and were going to kill them now that Naruto had defeated the other two. But that was not what happened. The figure that landed before Naruto with a hand placed on the boy's shoulder and an all too familiar smile on his face was her dead sensei. She blinked a few times, unsure if this was an illusion being created from the tears in her eyes or the thumping of her head. But he remained there, his smile now directed at Sasuke. She even faintly heard words come out of his mouth. Not that she could understand them over the pounding of her heart and all the blood rushing through her ears. Lastly, his smile was directed to her, though it faltered and became an apologetic and sad look as the man took in her state. Sakura looked from her very much alive sensei to the dead one laying only feet from her on the ground. Only instead of the horrific sight she knew was there, she was only able to see a log shredded into two pieces. Kakashi brushed past Naruto as the boy looked over his shoulder and also took in the state of his female teammate. He arrived in front of her and knelt down on one knee. She looked up into his eyes and the tears started again, though this time they were joyful ones. She screamed and cried as she lurched forwards, wrapping her arms around him in a desperate hug. "Sen?" she muttered out in between sobs and sniffles. Kakashi only hugged her tighter. "I'm sorry, Sakura. I know that must have been horrible to witness, but I promise I did not take such drastic action for no reason. I needed to confirm something of vital importance for this mission." Kakashi spoke with a gentle and comforting voice. Standing up and bringing Sakura to her feet, he allowed her to calm herself, and only when she nodded her head to him did he leave her to stand on her own. Naruto kept his eyes on Sakura as Kakashi took purposeful strides towards Tazuna. He hadn't expected such a strong reaction from her, but he understood. It's one thing to think you have prepared yourself for whatever may happen on a mission, but to actually encounter it, not only on their first mission but also on one where these types of situations should never occur, is a totally separate matter. To have this suddenly thrust onto her and to be confronted by the idea that she is not safe on missions through the death of someone she considers to be an immovable protector, one who has bested the best they had to offer time and time again, would be overwhelming. But as Kakashi had told her, he had not made that decision and acted out that play for no reason. It was to the benefit of the mission that their attackers believed Kakashi to be dead. After all, once who they consider to be the main threat is out of the picture, their next target is likely to be the true main objective of their attack. Kakashi was simply in the way of observing who they were truly after because of his perceived power and strength as the Jonin. That's why I held off from moving after Kakashi was killed. If I had acted too quickly, they wouldn't have shown us their objective and Kakashi's plan would have been wasted. Plus, allowing Sasuke to come to terms with the dangers and threats on a mission and chose to act in the defense of our employer for himself was important. It would do him no good to come to his rescue and spare him the hardship of making that decision. It would only hold him back, though seeing the look on his face might have been worth it. Naruto thought to himself. Turning his attention to the raven-haired boy, Naruto could practically see the adrenaline pumping through him. Sasuke had done well to react and put himself in a position to defend their client, even after witnessing the death of his sensei, and Kakashi had told him as much when he revealed himself as alive. Naruto could still see the tension in his shoulders. Just because he acted doesn't mean he wasn't scared or nervous, but being able to act in spite of those fears was a massive and essential step for him to take. The two boys made eye contact briefly and gave each other a small nod, both glad for the other's safety. Though Sasuke did allow his eyes to linger on the damaged path after Naruto had moved on to looking at their sensei and client. Kakashi approached Tazuna and allowed the fury boiling within to show. Of course, he knew this mission was more than his team originally bargained for. He even already knew the man was lying to them. But that didn't change the fact his team, one barely out of the academy, had just had the misfortune of combating what Kakashi knew were easily Chunin-level shinobi. After seeing the effect it had had on Sakura, Kakashi was seriously angry. But was he actually angry at Tazuna? It was his plan that had scared Sakura so much, and it was his negligence that had his team, who hadn't yet even learned tree climbing with chakra application, out on this mission. Deciding that he would have to make up for that, he knew it was time his team moved on from basic team drill training and began training in earnest. After all, he had already decided that they were worthy long ago. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Kakashi created two clones who moved over to each of the opposing shinobi, who were now beginning to pull themselves up. The clones vanished quickly into the woods to extract some information. Stopping before Tazuna, who was still sprawled out on his ass, Kakashi crouched before him. So, Mr. Tazuna, I think you've got a lot to tell me. So, it's best you get started quickly and explain why there are Chunin-level shinobi targeting you despite only applying for a C-rank mission. Looking into the eyes of the shinobi before him, Tazuna decided it would be best for his health and well-being to be honest with him. And so after taking a moment to steady himself, he stood from his seat on the ground and prepared to divulge everything. Okay, I understand. You are right, I wasn't honest with you. The truth is, the wave needs this bridge for more than just reconnecting to the mainland. A year or so ago, the people of my village were approached by a wealthy businessman named Gojo. He revealed an interest in purchasing some land and setting up business in Wave, using the large shipping industry available there to grow his trade. The rest of Team 7 now gathered around Tazuna as well, and at the name Gojo, Sakura perked up. Gojo? You mean Gojo of Gojo Company? Sakura exclaimed. That's right, Tazuna confirmed. Gojo is one of the richest men in the world, possibly the richest outside of the daimyo, feudal lords, and royal families. At first, many of the people thought this would be a good idea and readily sold him property. They expected that there would be a boon in traffic through the island from ship crew if trade and shipping were to increase. However, Gojo used the small foothold he had garnered to monopolize the land of waves. Tazuna paused, then with a slight tremble in his hand took a drink from his flask. He continued on with his story after composing himself and taking brief comfort in the alcohol he always carried. He set about isolating the country, firstly by taking control of the seas surrounding Wave. He used the pretense of trade and his shipping company to hide the fact that the waters were now crawling with his ships. No one could enter or exit without his knowledge and permission, and with no access to the sea our isolation only grew. In controlling the sea, Gojo controlled Wave. There was no food unless Gojo provided it, at a cost of course. There was no fresh water unless it was bought from Gojo Company. There was no medical treatment unless it was being paid to Gojo. Our entire lives became reliant on him, and with that in his hands he could do as he pleased. Without any link to the outside world, no one knew what was happening in Wave. It was as if it was all taking place behind drawn curtains. Gojo went about setting up ports for trade, using the island as a place to freely stop off and resupply. Usually, ports would charge companies for that, and the surrounding area would make revenue through shops and hotels for the ship's crew that would need rest and provisions. However, with Gojo controlling Wave as he does, he could do it for free. But of course, trade isn't all Gojo deals in. What do you mean by that? Kakashi asked. Naruto assumed he already knew the answer to that but wanted Tazuna to explain it himself. Gojo is known for his wealth and his successful business Gojo Company. But that's only the surface of everything that man deals in. He's a disgusting man who cares only for his own wealth and status. He has aspirations of becoming so influential that he gets invited into the daimyo's courts, where he would be practically untouchable. To achieve that goal, he has his hands dirted in anything you can imagine: drugs, money laundering, human trafficking, prostitution, and slavery. They are all but a means to an end for him, only something that will quicken his ascent in the world. Wave is a suitable base to run his dealings through, not only because of his control over the people but also its geographical advantage of being isolated. He can do as he pleases without fear of being outed for his crimes. The more Naruto listened, the more he was certain the Hokage already knew of the situation in the Land of Waves, Gojo's corrupt dealings, and the potential danger he posed if he was looking to expand his sphere of influence into Hai no Kuni, and that he and Kakashi had an overarching plan that went beyond Team 7's mission to simply escort and protect Tazuna. In helping them to establish a connection with the mainland while also defending or liberating them from this Gojo, we also establish a measure of gratitude and build trust. It's likely that the first people they will seek out to trade or do business with in the future will be the home of their saviors. So, we're here to establish good rapport and forward the Leaf's interests through an alliance with the liberated Land of Waves. But in order to successfully complete our mission, Gojo will need to be dealt with. A cancerous tumor like him would only continue to come back and haunt you unless it was completely removed. And if he's posing a threat to Konoha and Hai no Kuni in the future, then getting rid of Gojo looks like we're helping the people of Wave to an outside spectator, but is also of benefit to Konoha. Not bad, old man, not bad. Just as Naruto finished that thought, the two clones of Kakashi returned from the woods, each of them dragging the men who had attacked them back towards the main group, where they unceremoniously dropped them by the feet of Kakashi and Tazuna before poofing out of existence. Kakashi seemed to close his eye to ponder something briefly before he began speaking. Well then, allow me to introduce you to Gozu and Meizu, who together are called the Demon Brothers. These guys are, or were, Chunin-level missing ninja from Kirigakure no Sato, village hidden in the mist, who went rouge after their resistance made a failed assassination attempt on the Mizukage. That particular piece of information caught the group's attention. They were tasked by their leader to assassinate Tazuna during his return trip. It seems Gojo is getting antsy about the bridge's construction and wants to cut the progress off at the head. And by head, I mean your head, Tazuna. Kakashi continued. It's not surprising that he would target Tazuna, but if he's so nervous about the bridge, why not just destroy it? Based on what Tazuna has told us, it's not like Wave could afford to start over if he did, Naruto asked. Kakashi looked to his student and pondered that question. After a moment of thought, he answered, as I mentioned, these demon brothers were sent after Tazuna by their leader. They took a suicide pill before I could find out their identity, but I did manage to find out that it's one of the Rouge members of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. The mention of that famous group caused Sakura to pale a little. She had learned all about them in history class. If you were to try and compare them to a group within the Leaf Village in terms of power, prestige, and notoriety, she could only think to compare them to the legendary Sannin, the three students of Sarutobi Hiruzen, their third Hokage. They were the most powerful subordinates of their respective Kage. But both groups had produced less than stellar people. Kakashi continued, If Gozu and Meizu are under orders from one of the seven, it's prudent to guess that they've split up for a reason, one forced to deal with the target, in this case Mr. Tazuna, and another to work on something in the Land of Waves during his absence. Could be that you're exactly right, Naruto, and that the bridge has been targeted, but I think it's unlikely. I believe Gojo wishes to crush all hope and ideas of a resistance. By killing Tazuna, he makes it so Wave no longer has the will to continue building the bridge, but also kills the only person with the construction skills to do it. Allowing the unfinished bridge to stand means there will always be that massive looming reminder for the people of Wave that the last time they resisted him they suffered. Kakashi finished off. Now came the moment of truth for Kakashi. He was a little put off about continuing, knowing now that a member of the Seven Swordsmen could be awaiting them in Wave, but he also knew that his team wouldn't be the only ones on this mission. The Hokage wished to free Wave, and so was sending an ANBU team to infiltrate while Kakashi and his team distracted Gojo and pulled his attention. Without his team continuing, the Black Ops mission couldn't continue either, but forcing Genin to face a foe of this caliber should be fatal, a complete suicide mission with no hope of victory. But his team weren't ordinary Genin, were they? Naruto, Kakashi spoke, getting the boy's attention. You said you were willing to talk about your abilities, and I have no reason to doubt you on that. But we haven't got around to having that conversation yet. Whether I even give you the option to decide if you want to continue this mission will depend on this, so really consider it. Could you support me in a fight with one of the seven, without putting your life at risk? With Tazuna having explained the current situation in the Land of Waves to Team 7, they now had a choice to make, well, at least the illusion of choice. Naruto had to admit Kakashi had played this out nicely. Technically, if they were following protocol, in a situation like their current circumstance, a team unfit or unqualified to handle mission parameters exceeding that of the original mission should turn back to Konoha or request backup. However, with the defeat of the now identified Demon Brothers, and the knowledge gained from their interrogation that an even greater threat awaited them, it complicated things. A threat of this magnitude should make it a no-brainer that they should return to the village. After all, their client had grossly misrepresented the level of this mission. However, there was clearly more to this mission that he and his fellow Genin were not aware of, and it was apparently hinging entirely on Naruto's capabilities. Kakashi doesn't know my limits. He has an idea only based on what he's seen from me in training and one brief encounter with enemy ninja. He's working with an unknown variable, one that has the potential to sway his decision both ways. He wants to continue in order to fulfill whatever task the Hokage has delegated to him, but he also won't endanger our lives if we cannot stack up to it. He likely hadn't expected to encounter a shinobi powerful enough that he couldn't handle them comfortably by his lonesome, and now that he knows there is someone of that caliber, he can't guarantee that he can protect us. It'll hurt Sasuke's pride that he's been overlooked here, but he's weak in comparison to the enemy we will face, a more powerful than average fish, but still a baby. He can easily be eaten up by an adult fish of a lower caliber. That analogy was shit, Naruto, but the point still stands. Looking to his sensei, Naruto made his decision support you? I'd win. Team 7 waters surrounding the Land of Waves. Come on, quit pouting already, Sasuke. You're killing the upbeat mood we had going on. Naruto complained loudly. At least you're still on the mission. If it wasn't for me, you'd be walking home just now. Sasuke shot Naruto a dirty look for that, but had to concede that the blonde was right. Kakashi had only allowed the team to debate on continuing this mission because Naruto had convinced him that he could measure up to the Jonin if need be. If he had been any less sure of his ability, then they would have been turned around and heading for home. Sasuke couldn't allow his first mission, his first chance to truly prove himself and improve, to end like that. Of course, when Kakashi had asked them what they wanted to do, whether they wanted to abandon this mission or continue on despite the risk, Sasuke was the first to declare they would continue. Sasuke knew Naruto was strong, even begrudgingly accepted he was stronger than Sasuke himself was, but he still prickled at the fact that Kakashi believed the difference to be so vast that Naruto's abilities alone would determine his final decision, as if Sasuke was inconsequential to the outcome, that he was reduced to the same level of impact as Sakura. TCH, I'm not pouting. Unlike some people, I'm aware of the fact we're currently in enemy territory and crossing a sea surrounded in a fog, so think I can barely see 10 feet ahead of myself, using a rickety wooden boat? Or did you forget we're sneaking back into a country that's supposed to be on lockdown? Sasuke asked, his voice failing to hide his turmoil. Sasuke was right about that. Team 7 along with Tazuna were currently huddled together in a small fishing boat likely only meant to fit 3 or so people. They were being ferried over the water by a man from Wave that Tazuna knew, the same man who had smuggled Tazuna off the island. The man looked terrible. His ragged clothes hung loosely around an unhealthily slim figure for a man of his size. He had a straw hat on his head which was tilted down so low it would be impossible to make direct eye contact with him, though despite that the man still swiveled his head around so frequently one would think he was watching a tennis game. He was reluctant to accept so many people onto his boat when they arrived at the meeting point he and Tazuna had agreed upon, though after some persuasion from Tazuna he did eventually grant them all access. Just as Naruto was about to reply to Sasuke, something else grabbed his attention away. Asterisk whistle asterisk, that's one fancy bridge you've got there. Impressive considering it's just you and a ragtag group of men from the island, Naruto said, genuinely impressed. At his comment, the rest of the group turned in the direction he was facing and were met with the sight of fog. What are you talking about, Naruto, you idiot? I can't see anything through this fog, Sakura complained. Give it a second, you'll see in 3, 2, 1 inch. See wa? Sakura began before being silenced as the boat traveled past a massive structure rising out of the sea. Its presence so looming Sakura wasn't sure how the fog had managed to hide it at all. It was the support for the bridge rising out of the water and up into the sky before vanishing back into fog. It marked the furthest point the construction had reached out into the sea. Tazuna looked to the bridge and was silent for a few moments, simply looking up and drinking in the scale of his own creation. There she is. This is what will free us from Gojo and his corruption, Tazuna spoke. It has to, he added under his breath before taking a drink from his flask. He looked at the blond boy and spoke to him after wiping at the drink dribbling down his chin with the sleeve of his coat. Hey kid, how did you see that before any of us could? Your pink friend might be annoying, HUI, Sakura interrupted. But she was right when she said we couldn't see anything through that thick fog. Tazuna continued after the interruption. Well, I'm glad you asked. I was actually just dying to reveal my trump card and all its secrets for any old boatman to hear. Naruto began sarcastically. The truth is. Naruto's joke died off before he could make it as something else in the fog grabbed his attention away. Tisich could have just said that, no need to be a prick about it, Tazuna complained. Shoo, Naruto hissed quickly. His attention still stuck somewhere beyond their little boat. Now hold on a second, you brat. I may owe your leader for you still being here, but don't think you can talk to me like the… Tazuna was cut off again by a shout from Naruto. Get down, he yelled, quickly making to forcefully shove Tazuna's head down to safety, but was beaten there by Kakashi, who had been watching Naruto like a hawk since his attention was pulled away into the fog. Kakashi was a seasoned jonin, one of the peak shinobi, standing only below the Hokage and remaining Sannin in strength and prestige. But he didn't get to where he is now by being cocky or oblivious. When your student with an ocular jutsu with as many unknown variables as the 6 eyes had suddenly begins to stare out into the fog surrounding you, directly after demonstrating his ability to see through said fog far better than anyone else in their company could, Kakashi knew to trust his gut. And trusting his gut in this situation had just saved their client from being beheaded by the massive cleaver-like sword that came barreling through the fog, directly over Tazuna's head, and lodged itself into the support of the bridge. The occupants of the boat attempted to collect themselves, but the panicked movements of Tazuna and their ferrymen threatened to capsize their small raft. Looking to where the sword had come from was a fruitless endeavor, so they focused their attention back to the sword now stuck into the bridge. It was truly massive, far bigger than any sword ought to be, with a blade easily as long or longer than any of the genins' bodies, and a handle to match that was so big it looked like it was designed to be wielded by 6 hands rather than 2. More alarming than the massive sword, however, was the man stood atop it. Naruto studied the man. He was tall, easily a little taller than Kakashi, probably around 6 feet 2 inches. He was shirtless, covering his arms, with some kind of cow-marked sleeves. Naruto wondered about that fashion choice, and also covering the lower half of his face with bandages taped around his mouth and nose. He wore a strap over his bare chest, likely used to carry his weapon, as well as pin-striped baggy trousers which were once again accompanied by the black and white warmers matching his arms. His hair was short and spiky, and most prominently his headband, once bearing the mark of Kirigakure, was now scored out and worn sideways on his head. Kakashi had never seen one of the seven swordsmen personally before, but based on rumors and word of mouth this was Momochi Zabuza. Can't say I'm happy to see you, but I'm not totally surprised you're here either, Kakashi said. Oh, did the demon brothers tip you off? Lucky the pests are already dead then, or they'd have suffered for it. The man now identified to the rest of the group as Zabuza spoke, his voice gruff and gravelly, giving weight to his words that would have promised torture to the brothers for their supposed betrayal. No, killed themselves before I got a name, but did give away they were under orders from one of the seven swordsmen, Kakashi lightly corrected. Sakura paled, realizing that she was facing one of those demons she read all those stories about. The man only seemed to relish in that fear, though, as he looked over the rest of the boat's occupants behind Kakashi. Zabuza spoke once more. Well, considering their opponent was you and they've already paid for their failure with their lives, I'll let them off the hook. Chunin like them were never a match for you anyway. Kakashi of the Sharingan. Sharingan? Sasuke's mind was drawn out of the intensity of the moment, as that one word brought all thoughts other than why his lazy sensei was apparently linked somehow to his clan's birthright came to a screeching halt. Kakashi, though, didn't do anything. He began to move his hand upwards towards his slanted headband but paused and seemed to change his mind once more, dropping his hand. He still didn't move and didn't take his still solely visible eye off his soon-to-be adversary. After taking a moment to formulate a plan and run every possible action he could take through his mind, he spoke up, but this time not to the man before him. Naruto, Kakashi said, getting his student's attention. How did you know something was coming through this thick fog? Naruto too was keeping a close watch on Zabuza, not trusting the man to just let them plot quietly while waiting around. At first it was because the fog itself changed. Naruto began. The fog changed? I see. In what way did you perceive that change? Kakashi replied. There's difference between looking through a natural fog and one created by a jutsu. At first the fog was natural, but Naruto noticed straight away when chakra began lacing the mist. My eyes picked up on the chakra being pumped into it straight away. As clear as you see clouds on a blue sky, I noticed the change. But you can still see through it? Kakashi questioned. I can, was the confident reply from the blonde. Kakashi allowed himself a smile under his mask at that. Then Naruto's our trump card. If Zabuza used the ninja art, hidden mist jutsu, but Naruto's vision wasn't affected even with all the chakra floating around, then we have an element of surprise to spring on Zabuza. At this level my Sharingan could still penetrate it easily, but if he increases the chakra output there would be too much interference. Making his mind up, Kakashi nodded and prepared to fight. You done planning with the kiddies, Kakashi? Zabuza mocked with sarcasm dripping from his tone. Shame you've got such a handicap. I'd have liked to fight you properly, but this almost makes it too easy. Easy? Who are you calling E? Sasuke's quip was silenced by a maelstrom of malice smashing into him. Zabuza unleashed his killing intent, bored of hearing the children speak as if they were even real shinobi. These brats, they looked like they had never even killed a baby bird, let alone a human. Sasuke broke out in fearful cold sweats. Any remark he planned to make couldn't seem to force its way out his mouth, as if the words themselves were somehow afraid of this man before him. This was different from anything he had ever experienced before. Itachi was cold, efficient, and ruthless. He was the embodiment of the monster hiding in the dark shadows. He had mentally tortured Sasuke after the massacre of their clan, forcing him to relive the event over and over in a genjutsu. But Itachi also believed himself a noble, held himself like royalty. He would never use such a barbaric way of flaunting his strength. But Zabuza was truly mad. He was a killer, one who wanted to show them just how good at killing he truly was. And Sasuke felt it all the way down to his bones. He was afraid of this man. It was a different kind of fear than what he felt from Itachi. Fearing a man who obviously means to do you harm and fearing the dark are both the same emotion of fear, but expressed and processed differently. But Sasuke realized something in that moment. Staring fear and dread in the face truly made him understand. He was far more scared of the dark than this man. Land of waves, water under Tizuna's bridge. The sudden burst of killing intent marked the beginning of the battle to come. Kakashi leaped from their small raft and accelerated towards Zabuza's position. Kakashi knew that he would be seen as the main threat, despite Zabuza's main target being the old bridge builder. Without the ability to water walk, Tizuna was a sitting duck with no escape, and could therefore be left until after Kakashi was dealt with. Not that Zabuza would pass up an easy opportunity to complete his goal without fighting Kakashi, but that's where his genin came into play, providing at least some deterrent to just running past Kakashi to the old man. Zabuza's position standing atop his sword left him in a slightly vulnerable spot, and Kakashi sought to take advantage of that. With a quick reaction, Zabuza dropped from his perch, grabbing the handle of his sword on the way, allowing it to stop him as he briefly hung from it. Turning and planting his feet on the bridge's support, he pushed off the wall, bringing the sword with him, and spun rapidly in the air, generating momentum, which he used as he launched a counter to Kakashi's quick offensive. The massive claver tore through the leaf jonin like a hot knife through butter, but rather than feeling the spray of warm blood over his face that he has so craved since he was young, Zabuza felt a shock go through his entire body as the Kakashi that attacked him turned an electric blue color, revealing a lightning style shadow clone. Yasuko-sensei, came a cheer from the raft, which had been pushed back from the fight by the force of the clone's jump. Sakura was proud that she didn't freak out like the last time she had saw her sensei be chopped in half, before considering the fact that this was probably a weird thing to get used to. Tsh Zabuza grunted and shook off the lingering effects of the attack. His rapid recovery allowed him to react and pull his sword into position to block the follow-up strike, though he was launched into the air, as Kakashi burst from below the surface of the water, kunai in hand, and swung for the rogue mist ninja. The two opponents locked blades, one mighty with legends told of it and its past wielders, and another small, subtle, and arguably deadlier when in the right hands. The two ninjas shared some brief words as they came face to face. "When did you make the clone?" Zabuza asked, almost earnestly, though his frazzled hair and twitching eye belayed an annoyance at having lost the first confrontation in this battle. "When you were too busy showboating, releasing that meager killing intent to scare my cute little genin," came the reply from the one-eyed ninja, whom despite his joking and lightly insulting words wore a face of sheer ice, one that had been carved into place during countless battles during the Third Great Ninja War. "Meager." Zabuza bristled at the insult and pushed his weapon hard into Kakashi's smaller blade. Though with both combatants being in midair with no ground to push from, he lacked the ability to generate enough power to slice through the kunai and into the insolent ninja as he had intended. Instead, both fighters shook for dominance in the air until they came to land on the water's surface, where Kakashi shot back quickly to create distance from the powerful weapon. The two powerful shinobi became blurs of movement and motion as they charged again and again, exchanging in short one-blow attacks. Kakashi knew he had the range and power disadvantage in terms of weaponry, and so was forcing the battle to become one of speed, coming into range briefly from different directions and attacking, only to back away and shift location. Lugging around a weapon of that size isn't easy. No matter the training Zabuza has went through to use it effectively, you can't overcome the inherent disadvantage in speed and precision just through sheer will, Kakashi thought to himself as he prepared to launch another offensive. Hidden from view, he created a shadow clone and sent it forwards. He allowed the clone to act disoriented briefly as it looked for an escape following its attack, and when the real Kakashi saw Zabuza move to strike it down, he dashed out from the fog, prepared to lodge a kunai in the back of the swordsman's neck. Really? Attempting an assassination from within a hidden mist jutsu on the most proficient silent killer in any of the 5 great nations? "You're cockier than I thought," Zabuza roared, as a water clone rose from the water's surface to slice through Kakashi's shadow clone. The real Zabuza turned and swung a deadly crescent arc with his blade, poised to lop Kakashi in half. Kakashi did not slow down or alter course though, continuing on his path towards the deadly blade's swing. Suddenly Zabuza was pulled off balance as an attractive force acted upon his lower body, forcing him to stagger and lose control of his swing. His eyes widened as he saw the approaching gray-haired shinobi, as he desperately formed a one-handed seal with a hand he freed from his blade. Kakashi was slightly surprised. He thought Naruto would intervene with the red repulsive technique he had demonstrated. He wasn't foolish enough to believe that an experienced ninja, especially one from the Hidden Mist Village, would lose their balance on water just due to some choppy waves. Not letting that distract him for long, his blade found purchase, though not in Zabuza's neck as planned. The blade sunk into the rogue ninja's shoulder, as Zabuza directly manipulated the water clone he had made previously to move and deflect the attack, though it was destroyed in the process. For the second time since the fight began, the two war veterans were locked in place, motionless in stark contrast to the raging waters around them, which had been set in furious waves by the numerous clashes at high speeds. Kakashi struggled briefly in an attempt to deal a further blow to his adversary, but Zabuza was too experienced. Instead of panicking due to the injury, Zabuza attempted to use the proximity brought about by his situation to his advantage. The Kubikirabocho was an unwieldy weapon. It took a man as mad as they are powerful to truly wield it, and Zabuza was truly mad. The blade's incredible size meant it was ineffective at such close range, with such little room making it impossible to generate a powerful enough swing to cut through a seasoned shinobi like Kakashi, who was concentrating high amounts of chakra through his system to enhance his physical prowess at all times. And so Zabuza instead drove the massive hilt upwards, using one of his former village's most impressive creations like a hammer, a human-sized hammer. Kakashi stepped back, leaving the kunai embedded in Zabuza's shoulder, and flew through a short set of hand seals at a rapid pace before stopping. Lightning style, spider web, Kakashi placed both hands on the surface of the water, from which a pattern reminiscent of a spider's web stretched out from his palms. The blue interconnected lines formed an area of effect around 10 meters in circumference. Zabuza, who was off balance due to his improvised swing, was too slow to leave the jutsu's effective area and was caught in it. The C-ranked lightning jutsu activated and an electric current was spread all throughout the spider web design, with jolts of electricity arcing and surging. Using the water as a conduit, the jutsu's strength was enhanced and Zabuza was left convulsing in place. With Zabuza momentarily immobilized while he recovered from the attack, Kakashi wasted no time and was racing through another set of hand seals before the last jutsu's effect had even ended. This time he would end it. Once his seals were completed, Kakashi pointed his right arm downwards and grabbed onto his forearm with his left hand. A horrifically loud screeching noise, like thousands of birds chirping all at once, began, and rapidly Kakashi's chakra surged around his hand, and it became visible as he performed a nature transformation directly on his palm. Soon his hand was alight with sparkling arcs of dangerous electricity, which looked to be capable of cutting through lightning itself, which of course it had done. Kakashi's own original jutsu was prepared. Raikiri, lightning cutter, he roared as his technique was complete. The blow was fast, the jutsu accelerating the speed of its user. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over, or it should have been. Instead, Kakashi had pierced through a thick wall of ice. What? Ice release. Kakashi's mind swirled to figure out how this wall came to be, until he sensed the cause. Behind me, on the bridge. The Raikiri was an incredible jutsu, a loose variation on his own sensei's signature jutsu, created with the goal of adding his chakra nature to the pinnacle of shape manipulation. But every jutsu has a flaw. Kakashi had chosen not to unveil the eye hidden behind his headband. He was a little out of shape. Since leaving the ANBU, Kakashi had naturally been sent on easier, more open missions, which had left him ever so slightly out of practice from the life or death fights he was once so accustomed to, and the eye that did not truly belong to him would cost him a great deal of chakra. Left as the only jonin on this mission, for now, and in charge of the protection of his squad, losing too much chakra at this pivotal moment would only threaten to collapse this tenuous mission. However, with this choice he could not use the specific jutsu to its fullest. Even the shortest burst of movement, such as to move and pierce through Zabuza only a step or two away from him, caused a tunnel vision effect that made it impossible to react on time to new situations, and so instead of finding himself elbow deep into his opponent's chest, he was instead now locked up to the elbow in an ice wall that was beginning to rapidly spread over his entire arm, aiming, he could guess, to trap him. Naruto calmly watched the battle unfold from the small boat, now pushed quite far away from the confrontation by the powerful waves. We're all dead. I'm going to die. I can't. What? Their small boat was frantic with each occupant breathing and panting. Now freed from the killing intent that was directed at them, their minds were catching up to the situation they had found themselves in. None more so than the ferryman whom had stopped shouting and resumed gasping for air, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, so desperate and yet frustratingly unable to gather any air in his lungs. Naruto spoke to him then, though he never moved his eyes from the fight that no other on the boat could see through this fog. So how did that man, Zabuza, know we were traveling this way, I wonder? Of course, those two shinobi we met earlier were watching the path, waiting for Tazuna to return on the orders of the member of the Seven Swordsmen leading then, which has turned out to be our shark-toothed psycho here, so they knew he had left the land of waves. But how did they know we'd come this way, at this time, if we killed those two, devil bitches? Or whatever, Naruto pondered aloud. His tone was thoughtful and not necessarily hostile, but the ferryman felt like he was being accused, and it became even harder to breathe, now with another bit of tension added, though this one unrelated to the fight between monsters currently ongoing somewhere in the fog. Naruto continued, as though unaware of the discomfort he was causing the man behind them. Tazuna, this man is the one who first smuggled you off the island, no? Naruto asked. There was no reply for a long while, as Tazuna had hardly heard the young blonde boy's question. Too frightened at the thought of that man was he. Too petrified of his life ending and his home being lost forever was he. Too saddened by the thought of his daughter and grandson living like this for the rest of what he was sure would be tragically short lives for the people he most loved. When his brain registered the question, he struggled out an answer. Well, yes, this is Uraman, a man who has been by my side all my days and been supporting me since I started this bridge. Tazuna replied, not truly understanding the reason behind the question. Sasuke and Sakura too were puzzled at the seemingly pointless question regarding the man who had met them on the shore of the Land of Fire and, though seemingly reluctantly, offered them travel. Naruto hummed to himself briefly before continuing. Then I suppose you have shared quite a lot about your plan with him? Like the details of your expected time frame and whatnot? Tazuna bristled at the stupid question. Of course I did. How else do you expect to reach the wave from your mainland without a boat and someone to sail it? Tisk, he replied harshly. Naruto thought for a moment before speaking. Well, no need to fret over it, I suppose. Your friend's plan seems to be failing after all. Well, not that it's truly his plan, I'm sure. Remember this courtesy, Uraman. After all, we're here to save the land of waves and all its inhabitants. And that includes you. Even if you no longer deserve it, though I'm sure you had your reasons. The other occupants of the boat sat in silence, now coming to the realization that this was no random, unlucky encounter. This had been planned by the very man sat with them. With that, Uraman now began weeping silent tears. His lifelong friend was being targeted for trying to save him, trying to save everyone, and yet he had thought only of his own safety, enticed by a promise of a more lavish life after the wave fell to ruin, and he'd been discovered, outed to that very friend himself, though he supposed that maybe he didn't have the right to that word anymore. Sasuke, when he had picked up the meaning of Naruto's mumbled speech, shot a look filled with a myriad of emotions at the man lying prone, his chest convulsing as he tried to hide his whimpers. Treachery. Why is everyone in this world so damn quick to betray their family? Just like him. Sasuke felt rage build up inside and considered that maybe any who betray and kill their family deserve death. Just as his brother would die at his hands, perhaps this man should too. But before the thought could fester any longer and turn to action, Tazuna spoke. Uraman. Tazuna held a look of hurt as he gazed at an old friend, and yet his words followed a different path. I understand, he whispered. What? Came the shallow reply from Uraman, his voice barely reaching over the lump in his throat. Tazuna looked in the direction he knew his house to be, where Tsunami, his daughter, was waiting with his grandson Inari. He thought of the man they had lost at the beginning of this revolution and the effect it had on their small family, and felt that perhaps had it been Tsunami or Inari that had been taken instead, maybe his will would have faltered. There is nothing you need to say to me, I understand. That fear of losing them drives men like us to do things none could begin to grasp. But I too have family, and it's for them that I am standing up to Gojo, even if it makes us a target. What life is to be had in that place once that wretched man has pillaged it? Tazuna roared. Naruto paid it no further mind after that, leaving the men to argue over ideals they didn't have the power to uphold anyway, as he instead watched Kakashi perform a lightning-style jutsu that left Zabuza wide open. He paid apt attention when his sensei began molding an unbelievable amount of chakra into his hand and knew the fight was over. What struck him first about the fight was how quick it was, not necessarily the speed of their movements or the pace of their hand signs, which were still incredibly impressive, but instead how quickly the fight had started and ended. A true battle between shinobi of the highest caliber, and it was already over, one mistake taken advantage of and capitalized on, and it was effectively game over. Kakashi truly is a master of battle. His speed, precision, decision-making, they're all honed to perfection. No wasted movement. His chakra is perfectly manipulated and controlled to create power without wasting a drop. Naruto could not help but marvel at the man who had become his sensei. Yet, something was wrong. All of a sudden, there was another chakra signature approaching the battle, its color a vivid and gleaming white, shining like a lighthouse through the fog. The new figure rapidly manipulated their chakra and performed a jutsu. "Shit!" Naruto exclaimed as he watched the jutsu prevent Kakashi from ending their opponent's life. The wall rising up shone in the same color as its creator and seemed almost sentient as it began growing over his sensei's arm. "What? Naruto, what's happening? Is Kakashi-sensei hurt?" Sakura's nervousness returned in full as her attention was stripped from the two old men now hugging and crying, snot all over each other. Hearing her teammate, who so far had looked oddly calm, appear seriously panicked and concerned did not fill her with hope. She received no answer. Naruto watched as the new mysterious person landed near the fight, fearing that they would use this opportunity to attack Kakashi. His mind furiously attempted to come up with a solution. The boat had been pushed too far for his techniques to have the effectiveness necessary to save Kakashi, so he needed to get closer. He could warp over, but then he would be a sitting duck as he was unable to perform the technique that both Kakashi and Zabuza were using to walk on water. Being unable to do something was Naruto's least favorite thing in the world. He was goddamn Naruto Uzumaki, and yet he was incapable of doing anything more than being a bystander. He had boasted to Kakashi that he could back him up if it came down to it, and so far, all he'd managed was to briefly knock the sword master off balance. He needed to grow. He could not allow himself to idle any longer. His power was desperate to advance, to make him the strongest, yet he was being held back due to his own inactivity. No longer. Naruto focused. He focused his entire being into watching the water at Kakashi's feet. Using his perception of chakra, he watched how it was being output, watched the steady flow of chakra being emitted from the soles of his sensei's feet. Naruto stepped a foot out of the boat, attempting to emulate what he was seeing, matching with his own body what Kakashi was doing. His foot felt resistance and stopped briefly. Naruto put more weight on the foot, almost stepping off the boat entirely, but lost balance due to the volatile water. He tried again, forcing more chakra out, desperate for it to work, and yet it failed all the same. This time, after losing balance, his foot blasted a shot of water away due to the unnecessary amount of chakra being output. So, it isn't a matter of the amount of chakra that was causing the failure, he thought. Naruto paused. What was he missing? How was Kakashi standing so resolutely on the ever-changing water's surface? Perhaps that was it. The water was not a stable surface. Unlike the groundwater was mobile, moving. His chakra needed to adapt to that movement under his foot. He focused harder, pouring power into his eyes, which seemed to glow with an otherworldly blue light as they magnified his view. Zooming in to an almost atomic level, he noticed it now. Kakashi wasn't just sending a constant stream of chakra out of the soles of his feet. The volume of chakra was being adjusted continuously in order to adapt to the water's tumultuous nature. With this new understanding, Naruto now focused his attention to his own feet. He began to apply this new knowledge. He struggled briefly, his feet slipping into the water when hit with a particularly difficult current to match, but slowly he stepped his remaining foot off the boat and stood on the water. His team stared dumbfounded as he achieved a feat of chakra control only meant to be learned after a steady progression, which included learning how to walk on solid surfaces like walls and ceilings. But Naruto had skipped that through sheer will and talent. "Wah?" Sakura gasped. She had been trying to get his attention since he exclaimed earlier and seemed panicked. She watched as he attempted something clearly too difficult for them at their level and continued to question why he was even trying to go over there. She didn't want to think about the only scenario in which that would be necessary, the scenario in which their sensei had lost. But she had to remind herself painfully yet again that Naruto was different from them. No different from her. Sasuke was much closer to Naruto than he was her. Sasuke knew why Naruto was worried. He couldn't see through this damned fog like his blonde teammate. But he was no fool. If Naruto was trying to get over to whatever he had seen, then it didn't bode well for Kakashi's state in this fight. Sasuke had benefited from coming from an exclusively shinobi familial background, even if he didn't get to enjoy long with them. As such, he was privy to a couple of techniques regarding chakra control his brother had shared with him. He bristled at the ease with which he still thought of that man as his brother. Sasuke knew that the water-walking chakra technique was an elevated step of chakra control following after a shinobi learned the wall-walking technique. They followed this order of teaching because, while a wall is stable, all it requires is finding the right amount of chakra output to stick yourself and then maintaining it. He had begged Itachi to teach him this when he was younger, and yet all he had been met with was, "Sorry Sasuke, maybe next time. Enjoy your time with friends instead of worrying over training," his brother had said as he reached out and poked his forehead with 2 fingers, an action that Sasuke had hated, because it meant his brother was leaving. Sasuke was forced to watch bitterly as Naruto stepped off the small boat and stood on the water. For a few moments, a small reclusive part of Sasuke's mind hoped that Naruto would fall through the water's surface, but as Naruto tested himself with a small jump up and down, that bitter hope was dashed. Instead, Naruto left them, disappearing in that strange way that almost seemed like the world itself was the thing moving rather than Naruto. Sasuke was left with Sakura and the 2 crying men on the boat, his hand unconsciously reaching for where his teammate had just been, perhaps in hopes that being in contact with Naruto would have brought Sasuke with him as he left. Sakura's shouts went unheard to their intended recipient as he was now diving headfirst into a battle far too much to handle for a genin on his first mission away from home. Naruto felt it. This was what he needed, the desperation of a must-do situation, a moment where you either do or you do not, there is no try. As soon as he was sure he had the chakra output down, he took off, not even registering the voice of his teammate as she began to call for him. As he had told his sensei way back in their first spar, Naruto had 2 separate and yet intrinsically linked inherited techniques. The limitless technique had the potential to be truly limitless, an undefinable power with no clear ceiling, a power that depended solely on the applications its wielder could conceive, with no history, no tradition to limit his imagination as to what this power was capable of. Naruto had already achieved a great deal in terms of the applications of this technique, and he was about to show off more than he ever had before in the defense of the man he had come to respect and believe would be the one to help him achieve that limitless potential. Utilizing a long-distance teleportation technique that borrowed his power to fold space, he appeared in the air above his sensei. He arrived not a second too late as he watched the new assailant jump to the top of the wall of ice. Having prioritized Zabuza's safety before attacking Kakashi, wielding Senbon, of all things, the mysterious attacker was preparing to launch the Senbon at his captive sensei, who meanwhile was masterfully flipping through a string of one-handed seals, in which he had been forced to extend the number of seals in order to make up for his missing hand, in preparation to utilize a basic lightning technique that would shatter the ice by channeling lightning through his trapped hand and into the wall. The Senbon wielder would likely have struck before he could finish performing the jutsu if Naruto had not appeared in that moment, taking all 3 of the more experienced shinobi by complete surprise. This allowed him enough time to launch a powerful kick at the new shinobi whom he was now seeing properly for the first time. The shinobi wore a loose-fitting pinstriped olive-green kimono outfit which stopped at their knees. Over this they wore a lighter green haori with beautiful white trimmings along the edges, and around their waist was a brown sash that had been wrapped around the waist twice, matched with light brown sandals with straps in the same color as the kimono, and nail polish on their fingernails and toenails in a matching green color. Their long, silky black hair was gathered in a bun, while 2 locks of hair fell loose to frame the face. Or it would have if not for the porcelain white mask that covered it. The mask was thin, with curved eye holes and a red wavy design in place of the mouth, as well as the Kirigakure shinobi symbol etched boldly on the top. Seemed well cared for, despite its clear age. The masked shinobi was sent hurling back by the kick. To stun to properly block, all they managed was to get their left forearm in the way. The blow was heavy, unrealistically so. Far too much force for a boy that size, and the masked assailant's arm was broken inwards by the force. Kakashi managed to finish his hand seals and perform the jutsu to free himself with the ice wall shattering under the force of the electric current sent through it. He reached out in an attempt to stop Naruto sinking beneath the water but was stunned when his young student landed expertly on the water's surface with barely a wobble. Naruto, you truly are unbelievable. Kakashi could not help but marvel at his student, who seemed to have just decided he wanted to learn an advanced application of chakra control and so had done it on a whim. Well, seems like I owe you one, Naruto, Kakashi joked with his student moving to stand beside him. Well, it looked like this young girl was about to kill you. I thought you were supposed to be like the strongest person in the village besides the Hokage. Can you imagine how awkward it would have been for me to explain you got killed by a girl wielding toothpicks? Naruto fired back with a smirk up at the taller man. Kakashi laughed. I had it covered. No one asked you to teleport your smarmy little mouth over here and start being mean to your poor old beloved sensei. Naruto only rolled his eyes at the man in response, instead looking towards their opponents. The two Konoha shinobi faced off against the duo from Kiri, though oddly their symbols had a striking difference. I'd say it was 3 against 1 with the arrival of a Kirigakure hunter shinobi, but I must say your actions aren't quite what I'd expect of someone supposedly hunting this missing ninja. Kakashi spoke lazily, pointing out the irony of a hunter attacking the wrong shinobi. Perhaps another companion of yours, Zabuza, Kakashi surmised. The gray-haired man ignored the duh. Naruto spoke behind him and began thinking. Usually, a 2-on-2 here would be bad. I don't know, Naruto's or this newcomer's level, they might be evenly matched or totally unbalanced. The fact that a single kick done that much damage does ease my worry, but they were caught off guard. I doubt another blow, even of the same level, would result in the same outcome. An ice release bloodline. Definitely not a current member of the Hunter Nin, considering the troubles going on revolving people like that, but perhaps an old member from when Zabuza was a member of the Seven. If that's the case, I cannot allow Naruto to fight them until I'm 100% sure of his capabilities. Perhaps you ought to rethink your strategy, Zabuza. We have the advantage here. If you go now, I can guarantee you your life. Of course, if you return to face me again, know that I will show no such mercy, Kakashi threatened, his voice carrying the weight of a man destined to lead the greatest and strongest of the hidden villages. Though Kakashi thought he likely had the advantage in a confrontation, he couldn't take the risk. Continuing on with Tazuna and protecting his students, 2 of which were technically unguarded at the moment, was his absolute priority. If he could achieve that without fighting, it would be the right call. Ha! A baby unfit to call himself a shinobi jumps in, and you think you've won. Quite the opposite, his interference only makes you weaker. Haku. Zabuza didn't need to say any more. The now identified Haku, who had shown no reaction to their injury, charged bodily at Naruto. Naruto, feeling the rush of improvement, calling charge to meet them. Their right forearms clashed as they met, creating a shockwave of energy that repelled all the water around them. Reaching over with his left arm, Naruto aimed a grab at Haku's collar and pulled his opponent towards him. With a resounding crack, Naruto's forehead met with the white mask and forced Haku to step back, bewildered as the mask cracked down the middle, though not quite fully breaking off. And here I was hoping to see your face. Perhaps you're shy? Don't worry, I have to look at my teammate's ugly mug all the time. If you're not a brooding dark-haired loner, you're automatically better looking than him, Naruto said as he again took a quick step forward, throwing a left hook to the body. Haku, however, remained silent, and instead of rising to the bait, focused on defending. With one arm rendered unusable, they had to be much more careful of any blows aimed at their injured side. Forming a quick one-handed seal, Haku spoke, "Ice release. Frozen capturing field." Ice instantly began spreading across the water's surface from below Naruto's feet, instantly trapping them. The frozen area expanded and entrapped Naruto in its center. Taking the opportunity, Haku stood on the ice and threw 2 sunbon at Naruto and followed in behind them, ready to combat the young boy whilst he was trapped. Haku glanced over to make sure the copy ninja wasn't on his way to assist his young student and caught a glimpse of the man attempting to make his way over, but Zabuza landed a blow forcing Kakashi away. Sure that it was safe to combat the boy without interference, Haku charged at full speed. Naruto looked to his feet and laughed. An incredible home field advantage for you. Fighting on top of water like this, you must think it makes you capable of holding your own even with that busted-up arm. He stared at the incoming Senbon and watched as they flew right towards his eyes. Yet he did not move even an inch. Before the Senbon could pierce him through the eyes, they stopped. Left floating in mid-air, the two metal weapons appeared to have been halted by nothing. Haku couldn't believe it. What the hell? With no time to analyze the situation more thoroughly, Haku opted to continue the charge and fight. The two began exchanging blows. Haku opened with a straight jab, aiming to take advantage of the fact Naruto was locked in place. Naruto shot out with a left hand and baited the attack away. He continued on with the same movement, and after crouching slightly lower down to move out of the reach of the hand he just sent sailing over his head, he hit out with his left elbow, aiming for Haku's stomach. The ice wielder formed a sign and forced the ice under them to change. A sharp stalagmite-shaped shard of ice erupted upwards, aimed for the boy's gut. Haku expected him to abandon his attack and protect himself. Yet Naruto only smiled. Haku was sent skidding back almost to the edge of the floating iceberg they were fighting atop when Naruto's elbow landed. The boy's blows hurt. Haku couldn't understand why they were so painful. It's almost as though I'm being pulled into the blow at the same time, though it's irrelevant now that ice shard will have stabbed through his gut. Yet when Haku recovered, it was not to the sight they expected to see. The icicle was suspended, fighting against an unseen force in its attempt to run the boy through. Then it shattered, losing whatever unseen battle it had been having. Impossible. Barely a whisper, but the words escaped Haku's lips all the same. Naruto only grinned in response, flicking his fingers as if to say, "Come on." Cocky brat Haku couldn't help but smile beneath the mask. Just a little. This kid was in serious need of getting his ass kicked, and Haku would oblige him. Racing back in the two became a blur of motion, Naruto's feet still trapped in the ice. Naruto had the advantage with two usable arms, but Haku was throwing in kicks and knees for good measure. Naruto aimed an open palm strike at Haku's chin, which the mask-wearing Nin avoided with a